All right, hey folks, how's it going? This is Peter Hahn back on a live stream. Welcome back for those of you that are joining me for today. Obviously, we'll wait a couple minutes, see if people actually, start to kind of roll in a little bit before we start conversing and talking. But I figured, I could spend another day out of the week to just kind of hang out and draw and train and practice on everything I've kind of talked about in the past, which is kind of going into this condition, but still, we don't have to like go into it too far. But let me just kind of get set up and prepared. Just have to grab a last bit of tools. Just been kind of setting up the camera and making sure everything's been okay. In any case, for those of you popping in already in the chat, welcome. I'm gonna take off my glasses. I'm probably not gonna need it. Hopefully, audio, video sounds and looks okay. Let me just make sure things are not wobbling too much. I'm trying to do some kind of like hardware updates over the next month or two before classes begin again. It's been numerous numbers of years since I've updated my computer and even things like my just general desk. I kind of want to redo the entire space again. You can tell by my room is just cluttered with a bunch of stuff. So I need a kind of a late spring, early summer. What is it now? Late summer, not spring. It's August already. Kind of a late summer cleanup again as we go into now maybe early fall, late summer. But yeah, I wanted to get like a standing desk at some point. Things I can actually now get up a little bit now because I sit all the time when I'm doing my classes, and I kind of feel like I need to try to change it up a little bit. And I've talked about things like standing desk for a while, so I think it's time to maybe update that at some point. I've been finding some relatively cheap ones on Amazon, and a new computer that I might look into real soon. In any case, welcome for those of you that are hanging out here. If you're with me today, you can obviously just kind of chill, hang out, listen. Maybe you want to draw, sketch as well too. Hey Proco, how's it going? Oh, the Proco account. Actually, they're talking about potentially helping out in terms of layout of a studio. That would be kind of helpful. I always felt like my general YouTube setup, things like my camera, audio, all that sort of stuff, is very, very rudimentary, novice, if anything else. I'm running everything through OBS, through the YouTube account, but I always feel like things are kind of like just cobbled together. So, and I just kind of learn as I go, but I don't think it's really that well set up. And, as I continue to really invest in trying to get this YouTube account maintained as much as I can, hopefully we'll keep that going. Hey, Christian, how's it going, man? Welcome. So let's see. Today, I want to talk a bit about first what we're going to be doing. And then, of course, questions are welcome. We'll have a conversation. We'll be hanging out here about a good hour and a half, 2 hours. This is for me to kind of get back into the groove of things, as I've mentioned, and hopefully to train myself vocally and optically to be able to see things as best I can. Training constantly my twitch, muscles in my eyes, and keeping it going. So obviously you can see I do have a blank cover. This was the second book that I picked up. I went to the comic book shop before it closed here in Pasadena, and I picked up one which was that Batman cover I did the other time, and I picked up another one which was just this. I'm not really reading a lot of modern day comics that much anymore, so I'm not really up to date in terms of like some of the storylines and whatnot, but this seems to be within the same release period as that previous Batman cover that I just did. But I figured this would be another opportunity for some DC characters, and this is just more for fun, fan art kind of stuff. I may take these covers with me to New York Comic Con, just to have them set up. People might even want to like pick them up and stuff like that. So after this, going into the future, this coming week or so, I'm planning to initiate on my Dynamic Bible 2. So that book is already well underway, probably about halfway through or more. In terms of all the actual, artwork for it. So I'm planning to get back into it again as I'm recovering and getting back into working on some things before my classes also begin, because then it just gets busier. So next round of classes won't start up until around the end of October, I would say. So I still have this month, September, most of October to be able to recover, settle in, and still work on some things. In any case, M is asking, how is my eye in general? Right now, much like last time, it's relatively the same. things are okay vision wise. It's stronger, well, not stronger, but feeling consistent day to day. Hasn't been degrading. About maybe 4 or 5 feet is still what I can see in terms of single vision. Things that are far away are still double, but I would say the separation of the overlaps are not as bad, and the prisms help outside, which is what I'll be wearing. I have a feeling this will be ongoing for the next couple of months. The doctors are saying 3 months total, but I think it's going to be a bit longer. I think this is going to be a little bit kind of a stubborn thing to get back into in terms of back to normalcy, to whatever level that normalcy will be. But as long as I can see, I'm not blind. I didn't lose my vision, thankfully. And so, slow progress. I'm sure we'll get there. I just need to get back into working out a lot more. I've been doing PT stuff still. But in any case, we are going to be doing a classic Superman, Batman cover. I kind of want Superman on this side, Batman on this side, back to back, with a bunch of like drones and machines. I kind of looked through the book and I had no idea what's going on. And it looks like they're fighting robots, drones. So I figured I'd take some cues off of the actual book. I get these covers sometimes at Comic-Con and people ask for like random stuff at times. Sometimes I want it to be somewhat related to the book. Thank you, Diamond. Appreciate that. But yeah, thank you guys for asking. Vision, like I said, will slowly get there. Omega's asking, do I have any fear of avoidance of fish after the incident? It wasn't fish. It was actually bad meat. I ate tartare at a restaurant. The restaurant that I went to, if anybody ends up being in Pasadena, I will name it. The place I went to was a restaurant called Bone Kettle. It's off of Raymond and Union. And it's a restaurant I've been to many times. I would not have a problem eating there again for other stuff. But they had their beef tartare, which is a raw beef. And other people ate it too, but I actually ate a good amount of it. And that's what gave me the actual GI, bacterial infections. I would avoid that stuff at all costs, especially here in the US. I probably won't be touching beef tartare in the US at all, unless I travel. Like in Europe, it's a bit more of a normalcy of food, but in the US, you can't really find it well prepared. So I probably will avoid that for sure. Yeah, Vince, so these blank covers, I don't really find them that often, which is why I picked it up. I only found 2 when I went to the comic book shop. Literally just 2. No, there was another one for another comic series. I think it was G.I. Joe. I just wanted to pick up some of the classic ones. So I'm going to be using the classic brush pen as well, too. This is the Copic color brush pen. You can see I have a couple other ones over here. This one is the fine brush. These 2 are the medium brushes. I have 2 as just backup. This one's a thinner brush, mainly because I'm going to be doing some fine detail. I'd rather just use a thinner brush. I will say the last cover, the Batman one, was all right. I was kind of getting back into it. I feel like I tend to, especially when I live stream, get lost into the conversations, and I kind of go into the autopilot thing that I talked about before. I was trying to push this, sense of like breaking some of the routines, but even the Batman one, I felt like it had a little bit of tinge of the elements of my ways I do things process wise. So it was all right, but I don't want to fight it too much. And so whether I'm not fully satisfied by that last one, this one, we'll see how it goes. I don't really have an expectation to be this brand new experience as a drawing. But what I'm also going to do here, this is kind of like my dab sheet. This is just to like test the brush to make sure it's going okay. Sometimes it can be a little bit thick and gunky. The ink coagulates a little bit. I just want to make sure it's running all right. May, welcome. All the way from Morocco. That's awesome. Place I would love to visit. I'm just trying to get a sense of where things will go here, because obviously I have a full spread to work in. Whenever I do these covers, things to consider, obviously your focal point being the main cover. So this would be first read. Superman will be the first read. Batman will be the second read. I'll have some drone machinery down over here. The other half of the spread is going to be obviously the back cover, right? So of course this will be when people flip it, any additional data, information. I thought about putting some additional characters, but this will most likely be just excess, machinery and debris. So this is going to be a down angle view. As it is a down angle, I'm going to put Superman's head up here. Him coming off of the spread of the spine, I'm okay with. So most likely his chest will be in this direction, coming down, feet maybe like over here, maybe a little bit longer. I want the cape going that direction. Drones down over here. So what I'm doing right now, basically, as you guys see me do before, is just to give myself general like estimation and projecting an idea. It's not like a clear image in my head, but it's just a projection of a concept where things could maybe go. So then from there, I can kind of follow it, or I can just kind of like move around, around it or away from it if I need to. So when people ask me, it's like, how do I go straight in? Do I not have a direct idea in mind? No, I usually have an idea, but not a clear picture. So I still don't know exactly what this is going to look like. Even the position of Superman's head, maybe I'm going to have him face this way, looking this direction. Almost like as if they're like looking back to back. So this first line, first mark, if anything else, will be important because it kind of establishes like where scale-wise this character will be. I haven't drawn Superman probably in like 2 years. The Batman I drew the last stream was probably the last Batman I drew in like a year. So this whole year, I could be lying because I don't remember, but this whole year I don't remember drawing any of these characters at all. So when I do like fan art stuff or known properties and brands, it's not very common. I'll do them, like I said, like once a year when we go to like Comic Cons and shows. So this character I haven't drawn in a while. So I'm trying to get a like sense of like what I'm trying to do. So let's start right off. So the idea right now is just to get a feel position of the head. It's going to be a lot of his hair. And this is with the brush pen, so I can't really fight it too much in terms of like fine detail just yet. And I'm also going to mark it with the brush with its natural movements. I might come in here with a fine liner tool to kind of add some additional small details, but we'll keep this a little bit easy for myself for this round of sketching. I'll get to some questions in just a moment. Kind of want to get a good sense of where this will be. So looking down, sketching, I'm still feeling generally okay. I couldn't even do this, especially when I was at the hospital. I don't want to make this conversation all about my recovery. But just to kind of talk about like currently what's going on, even like in this down position, man, it really hurt my eyes. But I'm glad that's passed. I'm not going to get into the face just yet. And we'll play strong with shadows. Last time with the cover, I was using, I believe, this pen, the Tombow. And I was trying to fill in darks with the marker and also with another type of like ink. It was just ink, brush and ink. And it just sat on the paper a little bit weird. And I remember it just didn't work always really well. So I decided to use this brush pen because this ink is a little bit better in terms of grip to the paper when it soaks in. I kind of got an idea for a pose all of a sudden. Just a sense of like what's going on. We'll see if it works. The down angle is not going to be very extreme. It's not like there's a ground plane below them. It'll just be slightly above their head. What I've been always wanted to play with is a lot of like positive and negative things. I'm trying to avoid over completing parts of sketches and drawings these days. So if there are parts I can kind of like leave open a little bit to suggestion, I would try to do so. Let's go to some of the questions and comments. Let's see, I'm going to go back up a little bit. Question I'm getting here right now is one, how to get better in drawing in perspective more freely. I mean, if anything else, of course, the common response that you'll get from most professionals to instructors is to learn those foundations, right? To the best of your skill and ability based on the time you have available. Going through, let's say, certain sort of programs, whether it's like videos, books, tutorials, actual classes, hands-on approach, to learn from people to understand the foundations of perspective, just how the rules work, even at a basic foundational level. Not to say that to become a perspective expert, which I'm not, but if you can get to a level that's competent enough, how much time would you need? I mean, I would say a good solid half a year of training into perspective is solid. And then, of course, using that training to perpetually extend on your own time to apply it to everyday sketching, drawing, your own stuff for years on end at that point, which would allow you to be able to negotiate that information as to what is actually practical, useful in the everyday use, and some information which is very viable and important. But if you don't use it, well, then, will you really need it that much? And if you have to use it, you'll remind yourself by going back and training again. So it doesn't really end. The fundamentals continue as much as you can, but there's also no guarantee of a timeline as to like when all of a sudden you'll have that moment of sense of, oh, I get it now, and I can freely just actively do what I want. It doesn't work that way. It's not an overnight switch. Didn't work that way for me. It was a gradual thing over time where I felt like, oh, that makes sense and that makes sense, and I can play with that. I can break that rule. I can follow this and not follow that. And it becomes kind of like your own sort of tools that you can come out and customize and do what you want. Proco is mentioning right now you're about to release a perspective demos, and that's going to be with also Marshall Vandrow. So check that out. If you can't really afford classes that have hands-on approach, which I still would recommend you do, at the very least going through things like Proco probably would be very helpful to hear information, to see a lot of demos, and also different sort of like the use of word of perspective, but more the perspective of the individual, of the instructor. What do they see? How do they approach it? What's viable for them, right? Isabella, welcome. Glad you're able to catch us here. Yeah, the Superman film, I haven't seen it yet, so I haven't been able to go to a theater, and I haven't been able to really sit and watch a lot of films actually, because I can't see the TV, so it's too far. That I can wear my glasses now and wear it, but these glasses, when I wear them, it's a little bit distorting still at this point, because I have a 10 diopter prism on this right-hand side, on this side. So if I turn my head a little bit, you can probably see the actual angle change on this thing. So what it's doing is bending the light to go into my misalignment of the eyes. But it's like looking through a fishbowl. So there's a lot of distortion and like a prismy rainbow effect. It's like filters, basically. It is a filter. So it's fine. I can still see single vision, but it's not perfect, right? But I can watch things on my phone, which is fine, but I haven't been able to go to a theater. Just those, everyday sort of like simple things I can't do anymore. I haven't been able to, but at this point I'm starting to feel a bit stronger to be able to get out there. So even like just going to a shopping mall, going to a store, just to like walk around and look at things, those small that little stuff can be taken for granted very easily. And then you realize like, oh, when you can't do it, how fast life becomes extremely dull. Thankfully, of course, I can use stuff like this to keep myself preoccupied. But still, you need interaction. You need stuff to kind of like, be out there in the world. And at first, it was very unsettling because I felt so like trapped in one spot in this very kind of like Groundhog Day sort of thing. Like every day felt the same. Um, but like I said, it's gotten better. Today, I was able to go out in the morning and have breakfast. Actual restaurant, sit down. It's still a little bit tricky, a little bit uncomfortable at times. Right now, the problem is I get like these. I talked about this last time in the stream, where things like the panicky feeling, the anxiety that comes up a little bit when I first got back from the hospital. It still triggers once in a while, and right now, what triggers it is kind of like the eyes still, because it's still coming back in terms of like strength. So sometimes I feel like I can't really get my eyes to open as wide as I want them to be. And so I always constantly have to feel like I have to like push my lid open. And it's very uncomfortable. And it makes me very like, again, anxious. So then the breathing starts to go up high again. So I have to like catch myself. And I have those moments still. What I don't want to happen is like where every day where I get out, my mind just like focuses on stuff like that. Because if I think about it, it gets worse, right? I'm sure some of you understand that. So I don't want to get to a mode where into the future where my everyday life is kind of facing that sort of dilemma. I was like, oh, when I step outside my door, I have to like mentally prepare myself. And it's like, I don't want to get into that kind of like mentality. So I got to get out there more. It's the other stuff that can make the recovery difficult, not just the physical, but the mental part. Again, I haven't seen the new Superman yet. I don't know how people here responded to the design of it. Um, I was a fan of the Man of Steel series with Henry Cavill. Uh, Zack Snyder's whatever to me. There's only one film I like from him. Uh, his whole DC stint was okay. The Man of Steel was probably one of the better ones I enjoyed out of the whole series. Um, the suit design was okay, and the question was more about like underpants on the outside or on the inside. I like the classic look, but I didn't mind the Man of Steel look either too. To me, it's like, I mean, yeah, for some people, it makes a huge difference in terms of the sort of like how iconic some of the designs are kind of kept, especially when it comes to keeping the what would you call it, accuracy maybe of what's source material. But even the new one, it's like I think it's fine. Everyone seems to be responding to the recent sort of like superhero costuming designs releasing in the upcoming sort of films like the Fantastic Four and Superman and now the whole Spider-Man stuff and how the suits look all classic and authentic is the word I was looking for, which is great. I'm going to go back up a little bit. I saw a couple of comments and questions. One from a donation. Well, thank you again from Idea Junkie. $4.99 donation. Appreciate that so much. Comment here in question is, glad to see you are doing better. This is a quick question on creative processes. How do you know what projects to shelve and what to pursue? It's a very stacked question, which I could talk about. And I say this all the time, for certain questions I get, whether it's a question about things like industry, education, mentality, even processes. And each question can have so much to respond to based on my own, sort of like mentality on it and me just thinking about it. But in terms of that, to ask a question or to read a question again, how do I know myself personally, what projects that I'm working on to just let go of? It's like I've worked on it, and it's just maybe not really going anywhere. Maybe it's not really satisfying me anymore. Maybe there is a priority of another project that comes into play. And how do I balance that, or do I not? Do I just shelve it? And then when do I know to pursue it, or what to pursue? In terms of that part of the question as well. So in terms of, for me personally, I'll keep this, kind of like to the point if I can. I don't want to go on too long. But that first part, which is, how do I know what projects to shelve? The question is, I guess for myself, is have I shelved projects recently in comparison to also when I was younger? When your organization basically, trumps the personal projects that you want to do. So for as an example, you could be in sessions of classes and all of a sudden you go off and you're on break, summer break or something like that. Oh, I'm going to take the next 3 months and work on my own project. But then your classes start up again. Shoot, I got homework coming in. I got to shelve that project. I'll work on it maybe when, I have more time. And what happens? You never touch it again, right? That I've done many times. Simple ideas. It could be a single sketch. Oh, that concept seems so interesting. I want to work on it more. Oh, shoot, homework comes in. I can't work on it right now. I'll put it together later. And then I will see it again years later, like a single drawing, which I have done. Back in like 2008, when I did my Comic-Con for the first time, I found a single digital drawing of a cat and a rat, which I eventually called Sprocket and Gear, which I did in 2006, and I found them in 2008. That drawing, a digital drawing in a hard drive. So that was just a cool looking drawing, and I picked it up and started up again. Did I initiate that sketch to be a project in the first place? Well, I thought it was a fun drawing. But again, even if it was or was not, it was shelved. So school obviously can influence this. After school, as I became, a professional, there weren't really moments for me to like really start a lot of personal projects because I was just working. I would work 9-to-5 job. I would come home and be tired, right? As most of you can relate to, maybe understand. And so you don't want to really work on anything. So I never really started or initiated projects around that time, which I would have been in my late 20s. It wasn't until 2008 when I was in my I was in my mid-20s. In my late 20s, which is only a couple of number of years, because of Comic-Con, I started to then initiate project concepts to make sketchbooks or books or comics or whatever the case is, independent stuff. And I would need to balance that with my, full-time job. So at that point, it's like I was kind of now forced to make sure I balance, give equal sort of consideration of a professional work and my personal things. At the end of the day, though, most of my time still went to my professional job. And the amount of time I had to actually work on the actual personal projects was still very truncated. But I gave it its due initial time to make sure I had enough to be able to finish the thing. And it would have been a year turnaround. So the following year, I have Comic-Con coming again, San Diego, July. So I knew I needed so much time to work on it. But around that time, I never really shelved projects. It was only maybe once. So in 2008, 9, 10, 2011 or 12, for Comic-Con, I was coming back, and the project that I had, Sprocket and Gear, the cat and the rat project, I had done for a number of years. And at that point, it's like, well, I kind of want to just do something else, So Sprocket and Gear was shelved because I felt like I pursued it and I kind of reached its limits up to that point based on either my skill level or based on even just pure interest, because I worked on it for 4 years straight. And it wasn't until, well, it wasn't even until later on. It was at that point where I felt like I just wanted to try something else. So I went to a different project while I was still working full time. So this other project I went into, I just had a small little concept. It's a short story idea. I played with it, worked on it for a year, and I came to Comic-Con, sold it. But that was a different sort of feel. With Sprocket and Gear, I pursued it for a number of years. But this other project in 2012, I did it 1 year and I showed it, and I can instantly tell the response. So in terms of projects, when I shelve things, usually it's based on feedback, right? It's not normally based on my sort of mentality or response to it, which I understand that other people can have this, which is like, I just don't like the way it looks, or my style is not set, or my work is getting better and the old stuff is so bad, I want to go back and work on it again. Or you just get tired of it, right? You get a different idea, you want to pursue that one. So those are personal reasons that you see for yourself that may shelve a project. But for me, I was always somewhat satisfied from the entertainment of producing it, but then it was the response of the audience that would dictate whether I would want to continue it or not. So the Sprocket and Gear, I always got good response. But then I made a personal choice because that at that point of 4 years, that was in a personal sense of what I just mentioned. Like, well, I'm kind of tired now of that thing. Next thing, right? I felt like I pursued it as long as I could. And so the next project I worked on for a year, instantly when people came up to Comic-Con, the response wasn't as like, not that it wasn't favorable, it was supported, but I could tell it wasn't as exciting. So I dropped it right then and there, that project. And then the following year, I did educational stuff. I did my first educational kind of like book, the Part of My Dust thing, the chalk book. And then from there, it was like mostly educational stuff. But in the recent years, I don't think I've had a project that I've completely shelved where I'm not going to touch it again. I might have multiple projects that need to be put on hiatus, but I haven't shelved them to the point where I don't want to work on them. I want to work on them. That's a difference. If the mentality is I have a project I'm working on and I'm tired of it, I don't like it, I'm not satisfied by it, you kind of get turned away or turned off by the thing. That's a struggle to pick it back up. But I have multiple projects I want to work on. I'm not really tired of them, nor do I not like them. I like them. It's just that now I have to also still prioritize which projects I still need to work on as the immediacy of release, and I'll eventually get to those cycles of them. So yes, they are, on the back burner. They are on shelf, but not abandoned. Is really the kind of the discerning factor, right? Because we can shelve many things, but then forget about them, and then completely just like have them fall apart. They don't get touched at all. But for my case, like I haven't, nor do I have right now, a project that is like that. Even though I have several projects that I do want to work on. And that could be like a comic book, educational book, it could be a story book, it could be an illustration book or a sketchbook, numerous things. Things that I definitely want to get into. But yeah. And then do I feel bad that I can't touch those things just yet? Not really. Because it gives me more time to even think about it more. It gets me even more excited, if anything else. But that's in my current sort of like mode today. I wouldn't say it's. I don't think I've had new project ideas probably in a while, actually, in a couple of years, because I'm so set with the project ideas I already have. I like them as much as I do, but I don't necessarily lack a different sort of concepts that I could play with if I wanted to. I hope that answers the question as best I can. Idea Junkie. Let me see if there's any other questions real quickly. Trust Trav, thank you for supporting for the book. Seth is asking, do you have any favorite resources for improving watercolor? Not really. For watercolor education, I might look at a place called SVS Learn. They're more illustration, but they do have a lot of watercolor stuff. There's not a lot of other watercolor kind of based classes out there. You can find a lot of books, but in terms of resource of books, what I would look at, I can't name one off the top of my head at the moment. I would be looking at artists that I favor and just kind of mimic and imitate what they do. But you're not going to really find a lot of processes of education, right? But SVS Learn is an online school. I think they're more like video-based tutorials, but they will have educational stuff for more like watercolor-based things. I'm gonna have him crush like some kind of mechanical drone metal, maybe an arm of some kind. I'll go through into the next question in just a moment. Let's see. Next question. There was another donation. Thank you again. Appreciate that. Let's see. So was this not extremely scary? Not being able to draw. Your whole life essence is drawing. When I found out about the condition, you were very afraid. For me, and well, to be honest, me having been your instructor, which obviously, how did it feel? I guess on that sense, was it scary? In the beginning, there was no initial feeling. It was just more of a sense of like, what's just going on, which then generates into a sense of slight fear of it. But I didn't really feel that until I went to the actual hospital and stayed there, because at that point it had been a number of days and we still had no idea. Even though we started to kind of like wipe away some of the big stuff, stroke, tumor, cancer, that sort of thing, still, it was a very real sort of thing I was feeling, and it wasn't getting better, and when you don't know what it is, you don't know how to treat it, you don't know exactly how long it'll take to get better. So in that sense, that mentality of like, this might be it forever, right? So then all of a sudden, you're no longer who you were, because it degrades on you mentally, and it's already affecting you physically. So very much so, it wasn't until that time in the hospital where I started to feel a lot more scared by it, because there was no way to really understand what it was. And you're talking to like a whole team of people, and they're just like poking and prodding you every day, taking blood and checking your vitals and getting all the scans and the MRI machines and stuff like that. And I had never ever gone through any sort of like severe medical sort of like experience. So everything was brand new to me. And then, of course, even things like financially. Man, it's like, yeah, I had insurance, but it's going to cover stuff? How am I going to pay for this? And then it's like daily life. I can't work. I don't know how long, so that also kind of throws you off. So very much so it started to build. And then eventually over time, once we started to find out what it was, then I started to focus on the actual physical impairments, right? It's like, shoot, my eyes. I don't know how long it's going to be. And then it was like severe headaches and tension. And I couldn't really like stay awake. I was just so exhausted. And then again, your thought goes into, it's like, well, this is going to be forever now, So yeah, it grinds on you, because then the days start to roll into each other. All of a sudden, it's like, it's only been a couple of days, but then it's like, now it's been a week. Now it's been 2 weeks. And now it's been a month and a half, almost 2 months. And in the beginning, every day felt exactly the same. And so then the lack of any sort of like connection or being able to just do the normalcy of your daily routine obviously can scare you. So very much so, I felt those things, and I went through the process of it. And I would probably very much say I'm still going through it now. Right? As much as I feel better than I was at the first initial symptoms, I still get those moments of like, my eyes still have not gotten better. I wish I could just flip it. It's like knock myself in the head and just kind of go straight. And because this is not some sort of like external cut that I can see healing over time, I don't know what's actually been affected, like how much of my nerves are really damaged and how much of the muscles are really bad. Like, will I need surgery? Is this set? I went to the optometrist, and when he was giving me prisms, I asked him straight up, like, how bad, are my eyes? And he's like, well, it's mild. So it gives me confidence. But even though they say that, I'm still not seeing straight. Things are still double. It still gives me distortion and um, what was that word I was looking for? It still gives me, not dizziness. It's disorienting. So I have to somehow find a way to cope as best I can. And then I get into those like daily routines where I'm not really doing much, and maybe I should be drawing more. It's like, and you just kind of want to sit and not do anything, right? That sense of apathy kind of settles in, and it's so quick and how fast we can just get complacent. So getting back into the exercise again, that sort of stuff, that's kind of even sometimes even more scarier in a lot of ways. Like how fast I just kind of like get into this mode where I just complacently just lay there. Just like get distracted just distracting myself essentially. And so that can suck. So doing stuff like this, it challenges me because like today I went into breakfast and I wasn't feeling that great this morning. I just felt again all those triggers, breathing wise, the eyes. I just felt uncomfortable. I don't know if anybody goes through stuff like that, like panicky anxiety feelings. Like I can't get my fingers to feel comfortable. Like I have to like stretch them constantly. Like feel like I have to like pull them apart. I get that, even at my toes. And it's so uncomfortable. It makes you literally want to like jump out of the car. But it's like you get through it. And I came home. It's like, okay, I feel better. And I could have just laid on the bed. It's like be on my phone. And I was in my room. I was taking care of my cat, and I was outside for a little bit and just catching my breath and feeling a little bit more just settled in. And my mind is like, I kind of want to rest, and my eyes are a little bit tired right now. When I close them, I can feel the kind of the burny sensation when you're really tired. But then it's in those moments where you're just like, I could. And I was just sitting here in the computer, and it was like I had this stuff around me, and I looked at the cover again. It's like I should draw, and you just do it. It's not really even like a forced thing. I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, I should force myself to draw. It didn't feel like that. I just sat and it's like, so it's an interesting kind of like way to verbally explain because I also wasn't fighting it. I knew it was something I could do. I think what comes back into it is back into that muscle memory a little bit. That does help. And also because of just how ingrained this is into my system. When I just sat down, there was just that normalcy of the pattern of like, just draw, and there was no, it's like, oh, I don't want to draw right now. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to live stream. I don't want to talk to people. Those things weren't coming into mind. Before this, like, oh, I should just lay down, maybe rest a little bit. But then I sat at the computer. It's like, oh, there's that. This. Oh, brush. I want to. Where are my brush pens? I was looking for them. It's like, oh, should I fill them up? And I was kind of playing with the tools. Like, okay, let's just draw. So it was just one of those one thing after the other. It's like kind of putting myself in the environment. I think that's really the things that kind of like get you rolling. If you put yourself in an environment where you don't engage in this stuff, again, you're just distracting yourself in things. So that very much could have happened. Would I have felt bad? Probably not. And I certainly, I don't think I would have. I would have just been on my bed, look at my phone. But it's like I wouldn't have been thinking like, oh, I should be drawing. I wouldn't have thought that. But I do know as time goes on that I do need to do more stuff like this. So I don't think back, it's like, oh, I regret the last couple of days. I should have been drawing more. No, it's like, well, now. Let's just start now again, So there aren't periods and moments where I feel bad or I feel sad by it. I was scared initially, not so much scared anymore. But I still get those moments of like anxiousness and this slight, awareness of like, my eyes still aren't there yet. How much longer? And the panic, it feels more the sense of urgency. Like I want to rush it. And that's where it becomes tough because you want to move faster, but you literally can't. It's like with this, I can't force anything because I can't see it healing. I don't know what's going on. Every day I just wake up and it feels the same, So it's definitely been a huge mental test for sure. I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully it did as best I could. Speedman's asking, quick ET and Dynamite Bible 2. It was supposed to be this year, but obviously because of my condition right now, it'll be most likely next year. The book is being worked on. It's on its way. But if I didn't have this whole thing, it would have been done this year. May is asking, is there something in your art or projects that you like people to ask about more, get more attention, particularly if it has a specific meaning to you? Not necessarily. A lot of the times I do these projects for myself. It satisfies me because it's fun to do. And if people like it, great. If they respond to it a certain way and give me that information, I very much appreciate it and I work off of it too. But I'm not expecting it nor wanting it to initiate the project, right? Usually I'll have something for myself and I'll then show it and then I'll get the feedback, which rolls it even stronger. But it's not the beginning spark, people's comments or thoughts or what they want. Luana is asking, when will my courses be available? For the next round of classes, it won't be until the end of October. So registration will most likely be at the beginning of October. I'm going to get to his face in just a minute. I think I'm going to finish up his legs down over here. I'll put Batman over here. And I'll get to the face last. Still considering even like how to draw his face. Whether making him a little bit more stylized or a little bit more realistic. I think I might go a bit more stylized. I don't know why. I may consider color on this with some marker. I feel like this one should go a little bit quicker than the Batman last time. I was fighting with the tools a little bit, and I was kind of fighting with that drawing just slightly too. It was okay, but it might have been because it was my first streaming back after a while. Just getting used to this whole thing again. Nopal's asking, wondering how long did it take you to develop your skills to pro level or to a level you were satisfied with? There was no set time in which I felt that way. It was such a slow, progressive thing that, incrementally you started finding things over time. There were no moments of like waking up one day and it's like, oh, I'm at a pro level now. It didn't really work that way. Because also even now it's like I feel like my skills they're satisfactory. They're good enough to do what I want to do. Do I still think I could be better? Sure, but everybody will think that way. But do I think they're satisfying for me? Yeah, of course. I still have fun doing it. But you're always still looking for ways to improve on things. And for me right now, it's not so much on like speed nor even quality. It's more of a mental thing for me. So it's really more where my time is at in my age, where what I'm focusing on is very different in terms of where my skills are going or developing. But when I was, initially developing my processes after school, college, didn't feel that way. I still felt like I was underprepared. As I was working in the industry for, numbers of years, still felt like I was kind of growing. I would say maybe like when I started to really develop my own stuff. That's probably the best way to answer this, which is like, when did I really, feel like my skills were reaching to a point where I was like gaining and feeling satisfied? It's when I initiated working on my own stuff, not working on like professional jobs, not working for a client, not doing stuff for school, not doing for somebody else, working on stuff for me and being able to tackle that, because that's difficult to satisfy yourself. Nor was I even fully satisfied, but that test of being able to work on things that you have to make for your own sort of like, venture or entrepreneurship or interest of things are the parts in which I think really kind of puts you on that line of like, you got to get it out there. Whether even like you're fully satisfied that or not, you got to put it out there. And that feedback, then that negotiation of how you work with yourself and your audience and your customers or your clients, that's where that confidence starts to build even more. So Maiso is asking about the Lure On project. Yeah, I have that book over there still. I need to work on that too. No, I really want to work on that as well, but that's kind of on the back burner still. Douglas is asking, what is the best approach to continue to improve? Best approach to continue to improve but not get trapped in infinite studies. Well, the vicious cycle of education is very much true, but it has to do with the application of it, right? So to improve but not get trapped in studies is to apply the studies into what I just mentioned right now, developing your own things, make projects. While you are making your projects, you are putting yourself out there to find jobs. If you can get client work, your progression and being able to work with clients and professional work can also improve as well too. But you can't just stay practicing figure drawing, for like 20 years. You got to use that figure drawing for something, right? Unless you just want to become a figurative artist, which is fine. But if you're trying to say I want to become a storyteller, a creator, concept artist, whatever venture you want to go into, some even commercial art, you got to use it for something. You got to use those foundations to apply to developing something, whatever that may be. So make shit. The thing is, making stuff like stories or comics and characters, illustrations, wasn't something I just started doing after college. I was doing this sort of stuff when I was a kid, right? Making my own little comic books, making my own little characters. It could be inspired or mimicking other artists. But as I became, a teenager in the high school, I had other friends. I would compare and compete with them. We'd create ideas and make comics again. And then I went to college, and that became more like, college level, where it's almost like trying to mimic industry level sort of work, right? That started to happen. And then when I started working in the industry, is developing my own projects to actually take it to those points and where it could actually be some viable licensed, IP. So I'm just going to work on this a little bit. Sometimes I get a little bit mindful of like, oh, I'm talking too much. I should draw more. In any case, I hope everyone else is doing well in terms of their pursuits towards the industry, education, personal ventures, and projects. It's been a test of a year for me and many others. So I hope a lot of you guys are still ecstatic about your own place and where you are, and I'm sure some of you are not very satisfied nor happy about things. So I do hope these sort of small little engagements can assist in some ways. Not that you're going to find really answers here, but it's more just, conversation. Like this back foot here, I would initially want to like draw the entire foot, but I'm going to actually leave it somewhat ghosted, suggesting that area. Let me zoom out a little bit. I'm going to put in more mechanical debris here. This is all just making stuff up. This is supposed to be some kind of like elbow, shoulder region of a mechanical arm. This is just going to make stuff up. Maybe with some kind of head. Anyways, let's see. A couple of the questions based on working processes. Silent Observer was asking, can you speak on completing a work of art in one session versus returning to work on it in sessions, and when to know which pieces require it? I think just honestly having multiple pieces to work on is fine. You know, having time to kind of step away from it, to have new eyes and fresh eyes to come back into is a good thing. But I will say, you know, it's important to be able to kind of see things through to its best finish. But in terms of like, well, do you even know what finished is, right? So then how do I find that out? Well, you compare it with work that you actually appreciate, other artists' stuff. With this artist over here that I'm looking at, that level of completion is what I'm trying to aim for. You don't say that I'm trying to be that. I'm not trying to copy that artist. I'm not trying to be that artist, but I can see what they are able to accomplish. I would like to be able to move in that direction as well too. So let's see if I can actually achieve something similar as an outcome in my own work. And then you fail, right? Or succeed. But you might find small little successes. Oh, like that piece I like a lot, or that piece I like a lot. This rest of the composition I'm not really into. But then you learn by doing more pieces, right? It's going to require hundreds, if not thousands and tens of thousands of pieces to work on. Sketch to illustration, from drawing to painting. But that's where, you know, using the research of your community of artists, of people that you look up to, your peers and students, or online community of stuff, is something that's very, very important. In a vacuum of a bubble, you being in your own room, you know, just working on your own stuff, you're not going to have any sense of context of where you even are and what you even want. So you can tell yourself, you know, I need to finish this piece. What does that even mean to you as a level of finish, right? What is finish? Is it just because it's rendered? I don't think a piece of rendered art is necessarily finished. A sketch can be finished also if the intention is that sort of direction, right? So it's based on what you want to do. But to know what you want to do, you got to see what others have done. Samuel saying you've also had diplopia since you were 8 now. Wow. Not for neurological reasons, so I see. So you must have monocular diplopia? Because I have binocular diplopia, right? So Diamond is my first time drawing in a long time. I mean, I've been drawing now for a couple of weeks, so it's not like brand new, but it still takes a moment to like settle back in. I'm doing okay right now. Like eye-wise, mentally, it feels all right. That's his belt right there. Let's go for the face. I'm gonna wipe off some excess ink here. It's getting a little bit coagulated. Thin out the brush, just to shape it so I get the proper line that I want. Baz is asking, can I also narrate the thoughts as I draw the rest of the piece? Yeah, I can try. You know, it's like in terms of where it's going right now, is it close to what I was looking for? I mean, not really. It's not what I initially planned. It is a slight down angle, but in terms of his pose, it changed. I initially just had him standing there. Do I think this is better? Yeah, I think it's fine. As I said, I kind of want to stylize his face a little bit, so which means his eyes will be a little bit more shaped. Instead of like indicated. In a more indicative process, it's like suggesting wrinkles and certain details, but pushing a shape to be a little bit more legible. Some smaller, finer things like I'll use a smaller pen. Good enough. Let's see, other questions. Daryl was mentioning you very much relate to that anxiety problem. Yeah. Something you've had since you were very young. You used to think about the heart palpitations. We're going to kill you. For me, it's the breathing. Ugh, it's a killer. But you know how to calm yourself down now, yeah. I've found ways, but it's still tricky. The brain is just so strong when it gets fixated on something. You can't let go. Glad to hear that, Anthony. Welcome here. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. There's a lot of comments. So if I missed a question, I apologize. Just ask again. Samuel's asking, you often find that you move too fast through your drawings and don't really give your brain time to work through the different decisions. Is there any advice you would give to slowing down? This is a situation what I'm dealing with myself right now, where I tend to move so rapidly because it's not that my brain's working fast, but it's also because of the training, the muscle memory. It's already so set in a process that I can just fall back on it. And I don't need to think as much, really, because I can automatically also react in conjunction also with my brain reacting very quickly for fast decision making. So there are times in which I'm live drawing, let's say online or in person, where because I'm thinking more about how I'm presenting myself and what questions are coming in the drawing process, now I'm just kind of moving super quickly, you know? So how do you slow that down? If I was working on my own, usually it's just, you know, kind of like having different sort of visual stimulus tends to help me, where I can kind of stop myself and like initiate that visual sort of like interaction, looking at a piece of art or watching a film or having a show on, something I just kind of watch. And it allows me to stop this for a moment and to kind of like, oh, I'm watching that. And I come back into it and rethink about what I'm trying to do. Something to kind of break away this sort of like habitual sort of like momentum, right? For a lot of young students, what I tend to tell people is to kind of place in a timer to like initiate a moment to like break again, to stop yourself from running and knowing that there's a trigger to stop you for a second, right? So a timer on your phone that could be like 10, 15 minutes. As it goes off, you stop drawing, you put your pen down, step away, and just get up for just a second and look and then come back into it and just think about, well, what do I want next? You know, it's like, is this being worked on too much? Like, do I not like that part? Do I need to start over? Right? So, and then add more time, add another 15, 20 minutes, and then go again. When the timer goes off, same thing, stop for a moment, put your pen down, just sit and think for a second. Give yourself a chance to really consider it. But for myself, I actually like using visual cues because it stops me from drawing. I was like, oh, I'm going to look at that again real quickly. Astro Center is asking, how many sketchbooks did it take to get your muscle memory? I've lost count how many sketchbooks I've gone through. Since I was a student, I mean, I don't even know. It could be several hundreds, if not thousands, right? Hey, Miguel. Miguel's asking, have you ever drawn on a shirt before? I've been drawing on black t-shirts with brush and bleach. I have, but mostly just on a white t-shirt, but not that often. And back in the day, I actually would draw on it with acrylic, just black acrylic, because the plastic paint usually was a lot more secure. Ink would just fade over time. The bleach idea is kind of cool, but drawing in opposites, like on a black chalkboard, I mean, it's fine too. I wouldn't mind that. Okay, let's see. Let's put his emblem on his chest. I'm going to make up a version of it. Let's see. Marrowwire, appreciate the comment, man. Thank you. Dian's mentioning you realize this year after working towards trying to get into the industry and working for a few jobs, you enjoy art more when it's just doing for yourself. Yeah, awesome. Samuel, you have a strabism. That's the misalignment to the eyes that you corrected with muscle training. 8 years ago, the left eye muscle started to not hold together anymore. Yeah, I gotta keep doing more of the eye training. For me though, it's like the eye training is a little bit difficult because after a certain point of vision, like maybe about 4 or 5 feet away, I start to get double. And it's mostly on the right hand side, but also just in general distance. Like for, up to that near point, the eyes work generally fine. I can converge. Looking to the right takes a bit of time to converge that, but it does slowly come together. Again, it's a little bit of a delay in the right eye, but in distance, it's like I can't even have the images come close together. Movement wise, it feels okay. I can look up, left, right, down in a general freedom movement, but the neurologist that I saw as a follow-up last week still says that the right eye has a little bit of restriction. So there's still something there, probably in the nerves, where it's not really activating the muscles as well as it could. So it's probably still in this kind of slow kind of recovery thing. I think I just also need to be patient. But I'm getting a lot of acupuncture work to stimulate the muscles around the area. Ravel is asking, do you have a collection of exercises to choose from? Today, not so much. Just drawing every day is what I do, no matter what it is. When I was a student, a lot of the class stuff we did, dynamic sketching work, was a part of it. In classes, I would sit there drawing circles and lines and shapes and forms and whatnot. So those things are going to be helpful too. But whatever class you take and exercises you pick up on, you got to just make it a daily routine. But if anything else, no matter what the exercise is, like anything like even when we're talking about eye stuff, it's then consistency, right? Because the problem with exercises is like you can't really know if it's going to work in the initial moment you do it. Same thing with my eyes. I complain, it's like, I'm doing this exercise here and there, but I don't know if it's working. It's going to take time. I don't know. So I just have to stick with it. Maybe it'll work, So, and that's kind of the risk factor in exercise you do. You invest time into it and you hope for the best, that it actually works based on how your mind and body respond to it. But the best thing to do is get out there and to encounter as many variables of exercises or techniques and methods or mentalities as you can. And then sometimes something like you listen to it, you hear it, it just kind of hits you. Like, that makes sense. I can see that. So you stick with that. Nick, I'm glad to hear you submitted your piece. Congratulations. Do more. Trashy Trav is asking, does getting a grasp on from, not sure what you were asking there, make all the other fundamentals click faster? I'm sorry, form. I read that wrong. Grasp on form, make all other fundamentals click faster. Yeah, it could. Is it a linking factor to all the fundamentals? It's definitely a factor of it. Other factors in terms of the fundamentals is purely also physical. Your manipulation of the tools, the muscle memory, being able to have stamina, endurance to be able to engage in a long period of time. So there's an element of physical, but also then the mental visual, how to visualize form, see things in three-dimensional space, understand the optical illusion of depth, techniques and methods of orders of what you work on. Then you're experiencing the tools, not physically, but the actual tool itself, what you respond to. Do I like ink? Do I like dry media? Do I like digital? Do I like this or that? So you got to play with a lot of things. So there's many variables that link all the other fundamentals to kind of click a little bit faster. So. Roger's asking, don't know if you already talked about it, but what changes do you feel the last experience had on your perspective of how you want to contribute to the art community with the work presence? In terms of the changes from, I'm assuming what you're talking about is my current experiences, like medically, and has that changed my perspective on how I want to contribute to the art community? Well, I feel like I've already tried to contribute as much as I could since teaching 15 years up to now. What I will say is it's having even more appreciation for the present moments of being able to actually do what I do. Not that I've ever really complained about certain things, but what happened, in the last number of weeks, up to a month and a half now, is the amount of stories of other people talking about their, impairments or conditions, things that they're going through physically and mentally. And having that, being able to have a channel to even share that more, right? Because I would talk about things like how I mentally feel here and there at times, but people mostly would ask and I would respond to it. But I wouldn't really share, personal stuff as much as I really did. It wasn't just something that would come into mind. But, and not to say that what I'm going through right now is even as severe as other cases, but it is still affecting me mentally and physically. So of course it becomes a talking point, but I think it became a talking point, but also created a channel to hear others and what they're going through. And not to say that I'm trying to be there for every single individual person to listen to their stories as much as I would like to. But to know that there are so many out there, that probably don't get a chance to even do what I do, which is to even express it, right? Not to have someone be an ear and listen to you, but to be able to just have a channel to just say things. For me, going to a therapist would help a lot, probably too, which I'm not against. But for me, doing classes and stuff like this, in a lot of ways, therapy for me. But then not everybody has that. And I've realized this when I've taught classes for the number of years that I have. But as I go through this, how common this sort of physical, mental, and medical sort of stuff is kind of prevalent through everybody. And I wish there was even more sort of support community and systems for people to just vocalize, to at least share their stories, right? And I think just that sort of awareness really helps a lot. Not that I have a sense of what would I do with that sort of information or community. I don't know, but I think it's just a place where people can at least have a chance to just say something, which I think can be sometimes maybe enough for the time being. But yeah, maybe I can find a way to collect those stories and collect that information, who those people are, where are they at, and then getting that information out there for one person to connect to another person. Maybe one person has some sort of solution or an experience that they've gone through, but that's going to help that other person, right? But in terms of the medical parts, right? people who are facing certain conditions and not really having to like or know anybody that's going through it. Because one of the interesting things I would say coming through this is my condition to Miller Fishers is so rare. Like there was nobody to talk to, that went through the same thing I had done or gone through or going through right now. So I don't know where I'm at in terms of like level of recovery, how fast it's going, and the severity of it. I don't know anyone. And I can look at online, but some of those cases are from like years ago, or maybe there was somebody from recently. And there was one person I reached out to that I talked about it last time, but I saw his podcast and I saw that person go through his discussion about his experience where he had triggered Miller Fisher syndrome like a week before or a month before I did. So I just found him online. I reached out to him and he emailed me back, and his was much more severe. So he was telling me, oh, your case is good. You're in a good spot. So that, helped a lot. Just being able to talk to somebody that at least had some level of remote similarity of things. So that could be something I can hopefully try to push for, right? Let's see some other comments here. Astro Center has another question, which is when I draw and I start to like it, I overcomplicate the drawing. Do you have advice for that? Usually up to that point when you feel like you like it, just stop. Stop working on it. Move on. Leave it and then come back to it. Fresh eyes. Because you're telling me that you already know when you like it something. So when you are able to register that, recognize it, it's probably best to just stop at that point. Maybe that's more difficult than it sounds. Maybe it is, because even though you're so enthused, you can't stop yourself. You want to keep going. All right, let's see if there's any other things we can talk about. Saying what I found surprising on using timers is how much you get done in a couple of minutes. Oh, yeah. I used to do this test at the beginning of classes when I used to teach in person at Art Center and other schools. It was kind of a tradition that Norm, my mentor, had done, but I altered it a little bit. And what I did was I included a timing portion of it. So what would happen is that if people here were in my class right now, and it was a physical classroom, right? And it was the first day of class, and everybody's there sitting them down under the chairs and tables. And I walked into the room, right? I put my stuff down, and on the chalkboard or on a whiteboard, I would call up 3 people. So let's say I called up, Philippe, Samuel, and Jason. I said, go up to the board, and I want you guys to draw this, this, and this. And I will give you a whiteboard marker or a piece of chalk, and you have 3 minutes. 3 minutes to sketch. And I would time you. And I would say start. And you would have to figure it out, right? And what people don't realize is how long actually 3 minutes is. People initially panic. It's like, I don't know what to draw. Like, how do I draw that thing? So I would say, draw a spider. You know what a spider is. So then you think about, like, how do I draw it? Like, what does the spider even look like? And you freak out. And the first initial response when you're given a task like that is that you start to move really fast. Because in your mind, you think 3 minutes is so short. I got to move quickly. But that's not the way to succeed in that part. The way to overcome something like that is to come up with a plan, right? So what I would tell them people is like, slow down. And how you slow down is when you have 3 minutes, just take your first 30 seconds, right? And just look at the board and visualize. Spider. Okay, well, what do spiders have? They got a body part and a big abdomen, and maybe I can think about a specific spider. Well, what do I know? Black widow, tarantula. Well, how many legs do spiders have, right? I just think about basic things that I know as what I've seen, as much as I can, what I've gathered in my lifetime, right? And then from that, 30 seconds just to think about it. And then I start drawing. If you don't at least give yourself a moment to process that data of information, and you start working and it's like, well, it's a bug and it's got a lot of legs. And it's got, this body part, but you're not really thinking beforehand, you're just reacting to it. You lose count of things. You forget where things go. You don't even know where they're supposed to go. And all of a sudden you're moving quickly and you mess up. And I got to erase it, do it again. Oh man, I forgot that leg. You erase it, do it again. All of a sudden you go into the mode of panic, right? We talk about like panic modes a lot. In drawing, it can be very stressful, especially when you're told to do something. You have a limited amount of time. So the first thing to do is just give yourself 30 seconds just to think about it. Before I started drawing this in the live stream, what did I do? I didn't just start drawing. I sat there and I started to visualize. Oh, his head will go here, legs can go over here, cape's going to go that direction, some mechanical parts over here. I'm giving myself an idea, parameters. I spend like 30 seconds just thinking about that, or longer. But if I had 3 minutes, right, 30 seconds, start drawing. And once I start drawing, try not to think as much. Just focus on those things that you made decisions on. Just act on that. It's almost like trying to complete those tasks. Don't add more tasks, just complete the ones you thought about. And then if you have time left over, then it's to finesse. Small little things. Little details here and there. Oh, spiders have hair. Oh, spiders have fangs. Oh, the Black Widow has that, hourglass thing. Webs, So I add the small little details at the end when they start to come into mind. Because after the first 2 minutes, then your brain starts to settle down. Because as you draw, you're into it and you calm down. And then you think about the actual stuff that comes into mind. But in that 3 minutes of sketching, that first 30 seconds, you just think. This is why I have that phrase, don't think while you're drawing. Think before you draw. And so that's where that comes from. If some people have heard of it and are curious as to why I say that and where it originates. And I've used this in live competition. You may think like, what do you mean live competition? Like live drawing competitions? Yeah, stuff like that. I've done live drawing competitions, it's not often, but I have done them. And usually, because I know how the mind works in that sense, especially when it pertains to drawing, people always go into the rushed mode. So how you win competitions usually actually sometimes is not based on quality. It's based on the concept, the idea. If you're given a task, let's say like themed based things, right? Not like draw an elephant or an animal. It's like theme concepts, story ideas. If your idea is stronger, the quality may not be as well drawn as the person next to you, but if the idea is strong, usually the audience response is better. It's not guaranteed, but that's what I've experienced. Let's go over this direction a little bit, get the cape. Man, I wish I had I have a small little Superman figure, like a 1/12 scale. I wish I had that on me. I actually don't even remember where I put it. It's a really nice figure that you can articulate and pose. Hopefully in October for New York Comic Con, I'll do a lot more of these commissions. I won't really have a new book to sell, so I won't have to rely upon doing commissions. If anybody's been to New York Comic Con, that's the one thing I liked about that convention is that the artist alley was strong. A lot of commission work. A lot of people love original art. So I already bought my tickets to New York and the hotel room and everything. Got it last night. I'll be there with the other Super Ronnie artist, Dong Ho Kim. And we'll be there together, hanging out. Colin's mentioning you have a story about you being a professional fencer. It's awesome. And the end of 2024, you couldn't move your foot. No one could explain. Hopefully, you're doing better now. Took 3 months, and now you can use both feet without any problems. But having an idea why that was why I had that was terrifying. Yeah, still a bit scared by it, but time helps out a lot. Definitely, time for sure. Ruben's asking, curious if I have any experience with lettering. As a graphic designer and lettering artist, the dynamic sketching class helped you a ton, especially the practice of adding, subtracting forms. Yeah, to a degree it has. Obviously, I don't do a lot of lettering. I've done some work with like logos and titles. That's helped me quite a bit. I've done a bit of graphic design, more like page layout, cover layout, that sort of stuff, book layouts, magazine sort of stuff as well too. But yeah, the dynamic sketching practice, I think, applies not to a singular area of just like illustration or commercial work. Any sort of visualization, right? Whether it's like graphic design, letter form, even things like interior, exterior layouts, even things like UI, UX design, it applies there too. I've had students from like motion design come in, animation as well, obviously. So dynamic sketching has applied to many areas of field. Just wrapping up the portion. What I want to do is kind of get into the marker here real soon, which is why I'm trying to wrap up the rest of the black and white. A lot of it's still just kind of more indicative methods. Cheetah's mentioning you have a lot of fear starting making projects for yourself. There's a comfort in confiding in training. Failure feels more okay. Do you have any recommendations for overcoming that or where to start? Well, I mean, scale is a huge part of it. I think one of the problems sometimes when you start a project is that it's very easy to think of it as a grand, large thing. Whether you want to or not, or your brain takes it that far. Initial ideas can be, you start to think about the story. Well, in terms of the story, you think about the backstory and then all these other characters and the world. And there's so much to think about. So you keep adding, and then all of a sudden you get overwhelmed because now I have to design all of this stuff and I have to create all these images and illustrations. And it's hard to keep track of all those assets. So you don't even want to begin. And by the time you actually got all those ideas on paper as a written form, you don't even want to create it because you're exhausted at that point. So the smaller the project, the better, right? Minimizing it down to like maybe even a single character with a single location, with a single sort of like, element to it. Short story. Maybe it's like, a series of 3 or 4 illustrations or a 5-page comic or, a single character design. The more minimized it can be as a smaller project you can chew on, there's this kind of a finish line you can see ahead of you, which is closer because you didn't set it so far beyond, right? If it's so far away, you don't know when it ends. And all of a sudden you keep adding more and more things to it and it doesn't end. And by the time you feel like you've gotten some headway, you get burnt out. And then you feel terrible. You feel disappointed. I couldn't keep going, or like I didn't finish the project, or I had to shelve it at that point. So scale of the project becomes important. Voided Neptune saying your back injury sidelined you. Yeah. Finally returned to drawing. Although healed, the mental game proved more challenging. Absolutely. Learned avoiding art only caused more anguish. Glad that you're back on it. So I need to kind of push more ink through on this thing. It's been sitting and drying up a little bit. Might even switch up to a thicker brush. Use one of these ones here. Again, these are those Pentel color brush pens. Uses a nice, rich, dark ink. It's also permanent because it's a pigment-based ink, not a water dye ink. A lot of minerals in it. I think I don't know what kind of carbon it is. I don't know if it's, sometimes they use bamboo. It could be something else. There's a lot of ink pushing out of this one. This is like a fresh new, I pushed a lot of ink inside the well. As you can see here. Getting a little bit more variation of stroke and line. Let's do a bit more visual debris work of machinery. Some type of cybernetic droid. This is like a spine. This will be its back. This will be a portion of its head. Let's see some other comments and thoughts. And we have a donation here from Colin. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Thanks for being such an aspiration as an artist and as a teacher you love from Switzerland. Again, thanks for the comments again, donation. Doing best I can. So you guys just being here, supporting and just, partaking in this sort of like online engagement helps me in part of my recovery and healing. because, as I said, I literally could have just been laying in bed, just watching my phone. So at least this engages me to at least draw, to think, to speak. My eyes have to like constantly move and look around, trying to read the text in the chat. And I would probably would say that this kind of stuff helps me sleep better too. Because if I'm not really doing anything, I'm just on my phone, I'm not really engaging a lot of other stuff. I don't feel like I've gone through a lot of physical, any sort of like, which I wouldn't, physical movements or even a mental load of strain. Because, even though it can be strained and a bit stressful, it's practice and it's good training. And so usually by the end of the day, then I'll get nice and tired. Not to say I probably wouldn't be tired from my eyes, but just brain wise. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not really engaging, there's so much thinking, so much thought. So physically can be tired, but mentally you can be just like awake constantly. So doing stuff like this usually will help me fall asleep. And sleep is probably one of the best things I probably need right now. Just good recovery sleep. I'm sure some people here struggle with sleep, and that can be quite damaging in terms of like, feeling driven, actually doing some of the work, because you just get so tired. And that was the one thing right before I was, feeling any of this stuff. Sleep-wise was always really good, even though I would sleep late. I always had good hours. I would have always have like, 7 hours of sleep a night. Fall asleep easily, wake up easily. But then once this thing hit, man, I was only getting like 3 hours of sleep a night. For days upon weeks. Exhausted. I did watch the first 2 episodes of Alien, though. Alien Earth. I don't know what I was expecting from that. But it's really nice to see a great quality resurgence of those two properties. Alien and Predator. Two of my favorites in terms of monster creature films. So to see them come back in a good way is very satisfying to see. Even though it is still a regurgitation of the same stuff we've seen before. But the quality in terms of design, not really a lot of risk taking, but at least it's still well thought out. I think the new Predator coming out, Badlands, is a bit of a risk taker. People are bagging on it because of the design. I'm interested because I've always wanted to have a Predator-centric character in a film for the Yacha. Because it's always following some human characters. And yes, this one does have the androids in it, but the fact that there is still a primary character, which is a Predator, that I've always wanted a film just based on that. Just following an actual Predator through the entire story. Just subtitle it, And that was because of my love of the initial Alien vs. Predator comic. And then, of course, I'm not going to say how bad it was, the film version of Alien vs. Predator. When it came out, I actually liked it quite a bit. I still do. I have a soft spot for it. It is a bad film, poorly made, but I have a soft spot for it. This is going to be Marker. Cheetah, thank you again for the donation, $10. It's great. Thank you again. Glad it was helpful in terms of answering your questions best I could, and appreciate your comments about the health recovery. Paksu, in terms of recovery, it's going as good as it can be, I guess. I have no framework as to like how I'm progressing or how well I am. Again, I consider my recovery time really starting at the beginning of July. I got this syndrome, Miller-Fisher's, in June. So I saw it on June 15th. But, treatment didn't start until a week afterwards, which was the IVIG. But I feel like my body, kind of fighting this off, it's in your system for about 2 or 3 weeks from what I read. In terms of your immune system being actively fighting you, essentially. So I think it needs like 2 to 4 weeks for it to like calm down. In that 2 to 4 weeks, how much damage it does is kind of up in the air. So by the time I got home, which was the 27th of June, I was still going through it essentially. So probably at the beginning of July is probably where things started to go into recovery mode. So then if you really look at that timeline, July, and right now it's what, August 13th. So it's only been maybe a month and a half, in terms of real recovery. Because after I left the hospital, I was still being hurt. And they're saying, 3 months minimally. And the average time of recovery of this is 3 to 6 months, right? So I'm looking at July, August, September, end of September into October to see some good progressions. But I'm already feeling pretty good. Like body-wise, I'm solid. But the eyes are taking time. So that I feel like the eyes are going to take at least a couple months. But in terms of like, is that good? With where I'm at, I have no idea. Seems like it. From what I read about a lot of the cases of other people, a lot of people get hit really hard with this. The ophthalmologist I was talking to said there was a much older lady that he came across from years ago that had Miller-Fisher syndrome. And she had a really severe case of diplopia. Like her double vision was bad. So bad that she had to have eye surgery, which I do not want to get. I don't want to mess with my eyes like that. But that's what kind of throws a little bit of fear at me. It's like, man, what happens like if I can't really recover from this? Would I need to get some kind of eye surgery to, move the muscles around or something like that? It's like that kind of stuff would suck. I don't think I will, because he told me my case is mild. But just because they say that, right? It's like, oh, you have a mild case, so you'll recover in 3 months. I have no idea. For all I know, the way my eyes are right now could be it. It's the way it could be. Not to say I'm not trying to think optimistically, but I'm also a realist. That could very much be the case. Yeah, Mikoto, you've had eye surgery. You have to be awake for it. Yeah. Ugh. I don't want that. With eye surgery with diplopia, it's like they have to go into the muscles and to kind of like, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I'm sure they have to either shorten it or something to make your eyes aligned. But then what does that do long-term wise, right? Does it restrict the movement? Could there be degrading effects? Could it get worse? Who knows? But, it's not like this thing is new in terms of Miller-Fisher's. It's been around since like the 50s. That's when they first like discovered it, in the 30s, 40s or something like that. And eye surgery for this kind of stuff has been around too. So I'm sure it's solid. But at the same time, I don't want to mess with it. I hope your case, Mikoto, turned out well. And I hope you're doing well with your eyes as well. Silent Observer saying a proper Alien vs. Predator movie set with the cloning Marines on a colony. Yeah, that would be great. If they just would make the movie from the comic, it'd be so satisfying. But it's too late now. Unless it is a series, like a TV series, that would be great. Colin's asking, do you have a favorite book focusing on the thinking parts of design? No, not really. There's not a lot of books on design and not a lot of books based on thinking and mentality of design. In terms of like, when I say books, visual books, right, that show processes or written or created by someone from my field, you're not going to find that quite a bit. But there's this book. It's over there. Hold on. Let me grab it. This was given to me as a birthday present this year. I haven't read it. I need to read it, but this is the one I got. Some people probably know about this one. It's probably apparently very popular right now. Author named Rick Rubin. I've heard of this, but it's called The Creative Act: A Way of Being. And I was recommended to it, from a former student of mine who gave it to me as a gift. So apparently it is about kind of like what we're talking about, as far as I know. So if anybody's looking for something to read, this could be the one. The Creative Act: A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. If anybody's read it and has any thoughts on it, please share. Silent Observer, thank you. Appreciate that. The book that I have looks like the How to Draw from Scott Robertson. Well, we share a lot of similar techniques and properties. For one thing, Scott was a former teacher of mine. But there is a fundamental difference between what Scott does and what I do, which is Scott's fundamental techniques, like the book that he has, How to Draw, really only applies to one subject matter, which is vehicles, right? If I asked you, take Scott Robertson's technique, and I want you to draw me a sea lion, or draw me a rhinoceros, or draw me a stag beetle, draw me, whatever subject matter. For you to find a way to apply that technique into a different subject will be very challenging, unless that book showed it to you, right? But he isolates it more to vehicles, because that's what he does. He's a vehicle designer. So it's a great book. If you want to learn how to draw cars and vehicles, it will help you quite a bit. Or some fundamental techniques of building form and perspectives and whatnot. Very viable work, and a very important book. But it's a book that's also much more beneficial if you have some foundations. So I feel like it's a little bit too advanced compared to like a beginner level thing. But again, that's one of the main differences. Where dynamic sketching, what I teach, is about how to see, not about the subject matter, how to see the world around you that applies to every subject matter. Humans, animals, vehicles, environments, plants, whatever you want to draw. Because it's more about not the subject, but the process and how you break it down. If that makes sense. Jack, thank you, man, for the comment again. You're curious how you would go about drawing silk produced by a silkworm using ink brush. Any suggestion? A very thin line. Here's what I would do, though. First, there's a couple of options. There's using very thin line, okay, to draw the web. Let's say this is like spider, right? And let's say the spider's spinneret is releasing silk. So the first option is to use a very thin line, as thin as possible, and suggesting the threads of the silk. I'm sorry, this is actually kind of blurry. Let me zoom out a little bit. To show the fineness of it. I wouldn't be doing the classic Spider-Man, sort of webs like this. You don't want to be doing that. This sort of construction will be from a web, right? Like an actual web that the spider would use to catch prey, if it's a web-building spider. But usually a lot of spiders, if it's coming out of the actual spinneret, is fine silk threads coming out in a uniform sort of parallel. It can spread, but there's not going to be a lot of connective lines in between. So it's all fibers of line like this. Now, you can use a thin line like that. You could also then be doing what I'm doing now, which is to draw on toned paper. Because if you have toned paper, then you'd want to use like, a highlighter tool like this. This is too thick right now. but something similar to this can be fine. So then you would use this to kind of show the thinness of the web, catching light. You can do that if you wanted to. Now, if you don't have toned paper, it's just white paper, then the only thing you can resort to is as thin of a line as you can. But considering more of the actual web construction, is it a web, actual like a what would you even call that? A trapping web? Is it a web bed? Is it the actual web coming out of the spinneret? Is it whatever it may be? Because then the way the lines would then move, you'd want to consider that. And then, of course, just slight suggestions of strokes. As Yelfreen is asking or saying. I hope that makes sense. Again, it's not the most refined piece to show you, but it's just on a little sticky note, but still. Kaiser, yeah, the animated Predator series, I think we're talking about, right? I don't think it's AVP, but it's a Predator series, the animated one. It's like short little stories set in different timelines. It's pretty cool. Mikoto, for your case, you had to cut a layer of the surface of the eye, so they picked it up with a metal rod. Oh my god. And the surgery was to stop progression. So you really only have one working eye. Wow. Yeah, the surgery that for diplopia would have to go into the muscles of the eye. Because in the eyeball, there's 4 connective muscles, right? From the sides to top and bottom. So, and then they're linked to the skull, the orbital socket. So that, I think, needs to be then adjusted somehow. It's not actually the eyeball itself, but it's the muscles around it. So I don't know how the surgery works in that part, but that's people that have like lazy eye or strabismus, I think that's what it's called. For binocular diplopia, like for me, it's temporary, is what they're saying. But I hope. Because I don't want eye surgery. Diamond saying, yeah, it's possible to draw anything with Scott's process. It's very much true. It can be. But one of the other main issues compared to what I try to do with dynamic sketching, due to the immensity of steps of processes in Scott's method, it's not that it just only takes longer, but it produces a very stiff iteration of it. Like I said, draw me a spider using Scott Robertson's building technique. You could do it. Not only take you longer, but the spider would just be sitting there. But if I said articulate the spider, catching some prey, spinning it up, using his process, it's not very practical. So dynamic sketching method is more about being able to adapt to the situation, see through shape and form, being able to indicate methods as well, to indicate techniques of lines and shapes and details. It's a balance between something gestural to constructive, right? But Scott's is all very mechanical. So again, still great stuff. Malik is asking, how do you approach each page of the Dynamic Bible? Should I just copy one page and move on to the next? Yeah, I will go linear at first, Malik. Looking at some of the lines exercise, some of the circles, base foundational stuff, and get familiarized to those things. In the early portion of the exercises, though, line circles, hatching techniques, building shape and form, use those exercises as a daily routine. First, you would treat those pages as a literal copy, do pages of them, right, for homework, and then into the future, all those exercises I just mentioned, make them a daily 10-minute warm-up. So as you then move on to like drawing the insects or drawing the cars, before you actually draw those subject matters, for like 10 minutes a day, you would do lines, circles, shapes, hatching, just to get warmed up. And so that way your muscle memory continues to build and your sense of control of the tool increases. So then as you move on to subject matter, you can focus on, the importance of proportion, line indication, the constructive technique, all those things that are important to the subjects, but still touch upon those exercises. But do go linear, if that makes sense, Malik. Jack, your statement is also true. Masses, clumped up forms, it's more contextual. as to like what it is you're trying to do with the web though, right? Because if it was a web, stuck to corners of like a wall, and it's like wrapped up something, well then yeah, I would treat that more of like masses of forms. But like what I just showed right now, if it's like a coming out of a spinneret, it's still an overall shape, this big triangle shape, but inside of it are very fine lines. So I still start with the shape idea, but then, depending on what it is you're trying to show, context matters, right? And then you can also play with it. You can stylize. So how you stylize and what you would play with is the shape and proportion. We've gone about almost 2 hours already. This one flew by. So let's move on here. I'm going to finish this portion up later on. Let's go into the actual characters again. And I'm going to play with some markers. I just have a baggie full of markers here. I have another baggie full of markers here. Don't remember which one I want to use. So let's just open it up. And let's just see what we got. Start with the base of the skin color. These are kind of like these yellow oranges, more skin tone, slight pinks. And then we'll go to the costume. Just so we can have a little bit of extra content on this stream that pertains to something a little bit more than just black and white. So let's see. Best thing to do when it comes to marker is using paper. This is the comic sleeve. I'm just going to use the backing of it. There's a slick side, a shiny side, and then there's a matte side. So I'll use the matte side. Okay, that's 4.1. I just want to give myself a palette if I want to use it at all. This is a 4.10 OR. It's the 4.30. 2.0. Just jotting down the markers that I see if I want to use them or not. It looks like it matches up with the cap fairly well, so I'm confident I can just look at the caps and just kind of go off of that. So I just kind of give myself an idea what it looks like on the paper first. And with this, with marker, you can either go light to dark, or dark to light, or middle and kind of go from both sides. So like mid-tone darks to the, you would leave the lights obviously. When I say light, like light saturation, it's almost like it washes a watercolor, and then build up to your saturation. So I would rarely go super saturated and then go low saturation. I would build up to my saturation, but in terms of value, light to dark or dark to light, the order of it doesn't really matter. In this case, I'm going to go light to dark and then go and build up to my saturation, which is the intensity of the color itself, right? So these ones over here were a lot lighter. It's like this one here, this is the yellow orange. This one over here is a little bit lighter too. So some of the lighter ones we'll stick with initially. Keenan, thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for the donation. Just reading some of the questions again if I missed anything. Sherwin's asking, when should I start using a brush pen? Should I wait till I'm a certain level with the fine tip? I mean, in this case, I would say yeah. Use the fine tip felt tip pens to kind of build up a little bit more muscle memory control and pressure sensitivity. Brush pen, I could say start with the brush pen whenever you feel curious, but the problem is it's very easy to overdo it and lose control of the brush pen. I think building up to that one would be better. So light direction wise, it'll be more from this way. So I'm going to imagine like a highlight around the edge of his head. So we're just going to go in there. Start using the marker. Let me zoom in a little bit. Thankfully, the ink from the brush pen is already dry and set. So we're going light. You can kind of see there's a light side. This is the highlight. And this is where I'm building up to then eventual saturations. But in terms of how rendering will work, if I'm going into traditional rendering, depending on how many light sources, of course, there are, but this will be considered like the halftones right here. This would be like the highlights. This could be also a halftone over here. The most of saturation will be right at the edge here, where it turns to the side of the face. So this is the front plane of the head as it goes to a side plane. That change and transition would show a high saturation. So it would go more to like the, whatever, you know, it could be reds or oranges or whatever the case is. Now the marker generally will dry a bit lighter, but as you build more layers, it can actually eventually even build up to darker or more saturated strokes. So even with this one marker, as I laid down one layer, it starts to fade away. As a secondary layer put on top, it kind of retains a bit more. So even with the one marker, you can get different levels. But I would say marker for me is a lot like watercolor. You just do washes of it, washes of it. In many cases, working with two markers at the same time can also be very helpful. This is more like a yellow-orange, which is like, I think of this color. And that color is kind of whatever to me. Let's go to this one. So what I would do then is maybe use something like this and the other marker to kind of like blend it. To kind of work it back and forth. Maybe I'll even take one that's a little bit more saturated. Maybe like this light orange-red. So in areas where there's a bit more blood in the face, or maybe at the edge of the nose or on the lips, cheeks, add a little bit more color. Maybe where the brows will furrow a little bit, compressing, pushing that blood, and I'll blend it. So I usually have like two markers out like that. With the Olo markers, this is the brand called Olo. Another cool thing I can do here is just take both of these markers that I like and have a little coupling. So I just connect this one. Just connect this one. And so now I have the two markers that I want. So I just work on one side. Instead of holding it with both hands, just flip it to the other one. The white of the paper is a highlight, so you got to just make sure you don't wash it entirely. Even the Batman over here. Just a little bit of his face sticking out there. Let's switch out a marker. Let's go to something just a tad bit darker. This is the 4.1. Let's go to the 4.3. Revels is asking, saw a demo of mine and picked an SD footing nib. Awesome. What is your opinion on the pen? I love it. I helped, kind of give them feedback on the prototype. It's not easy to find a really solid footing nib, and the SD model I think is a solid one. Are you using fountain pens this period or prefer brush pens? I like both. So right now, like for instance, I have this one. This is from SD, and this is also a footing nib, and this is the prototype. So the one you have right now, Revelf, is the production model, and these were the prototype nibs they sent me to test out the footing nib. So I give them a lot of feedback, thoughts about the pen. I'm going to use this to kind of push a little bit darker into some shadow areas. Let's go a little bit more red. Well, we'll just use this for now. It's okay. Flip it to blend it. Usually back in the day, like in Art Center, we would just use marker paper or vellum, and that would blend beautifully. And this is going to soak through, I'm sure, a little bit. Coming through a little bit right now. So let it dry slightly so it doesn't necessarily tear up the paper too much. The problem with marker, though, is that you need a lot of markers, right? Just to give you all the options of values and saturations. So it's expensive. Whereas like watercolor, you can buy a small little tin and have just a few primary colors or a set palette, and you get a whole range of colors of mixing. But watercolor is very finicky, a little bit trickier to use at times. So marker has benefit. But it's, all tools are great. If you just play with it enough, you start to see the tricks behind it, and you get more efficient. What I wanted to do was switch out this. Switch out this marker. I want just a little bit more color. There's a lot of like violet and pink and rosé, and I wanted something a little bit richer. I have a whole bunch more over there. Give me 1 second. We'll see if I can use these in conjunction as well too. These are Olo markers as well. Let me see what the color of this one is. Yeah, that's good. Malik had a question as well, which was about the Dynamic Bible. Can you use Procreate or stick to traditional with Dynamic Bible? Well, I would always suggest traditional, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to incorporate digital in conjunction with traditional. So I wouldn't isolate one or the other, Malik. I would use both if you're going to use them. If you're going to isolate one, I would stick with traditional and then incorporate digital as a part of it. But when, in terms of digital incorporation, it could be as soon as possible. So if you want to use Procreate in combination to traditional tools right now, go for it. Eofreen's asking any alternative to Ola markers. Markers in general are not cheap. you know, Copics are kind of dying, and those are expensive. I mean, you could literally go for off-brand, super cheap marker. I don't know, like Blix, art store makes markers or crap. But the problem is they don't last, and it's not like they're that cheap either. So if you're gonna spend a bit of money, it's like, yeah, spend just a save and spend just a little bit more for a brand that is actually qualitative. And these are refillable. You can get cartridges for them. So even though, yeah, they're a little bit spendy, I wouldn't necessarily go cheap with markers, because you do kind of get what you pay for. And the ones that are cheap will not last very long. And I'm not just saying that because I'm using Olo marker. Okay. Granted, I like these markers a lot. I think Olo does a good job. So I do recommend them. And I actually don't use marker that often. I think they're great for stuff like this because it goes super quick to color. Watercolor is great too, but for this paper, this comic cover stuff, it doesn't work that well. Because with a watercolor, it saturates it, and it does this weird thing. It doesn't look very good on these comic covers, watercolor. I've tried multiple times. So for color, for these sort of things, I think unless I just use direct paint, but marker is the best, or color pencil. Okay, let's go to looking for like a cool gray. Play with the color a little bit. Blue violets. So here we have a 0. This is a cool gray 0. So zeros are basically markers with no pigment. It's just the alcohol. This is a 7, pretty dark in value. And this is a 5. We'll stick with the 5, and we'll also use this kind of blue violet. I don't know what it's going to look like. I should just test it, but whatever. I'm just going here. Yeah, it's not that purpley. Just to give it a little bit of play upon color. There's not much I wanted to do with the hair, just a little bit. Let's see. Pulled out this red. I do want to see what this looks like. It's pretty good. Let's see if we have any other ones in here. These are more red violets. The orange will be pretty useful. Just to combine it together, see what it looks like. It's all right. See how much is coming through just yet? It's all right. So let's use this more pinkish color first. and areas for the light to hit that kind of cape area. Jack was also mentioning correction to your mulberry statement. Hanji paper is made from the paper mulberry tree. Yes. So I've been using that a lot. I love that paper quite a bit. Oh, you had a question earlier than that, which is, did you know the mulberry paper you mentioned, I think, the stream ago, is one from the trees of the silkworm? Yes, absolutely. The mulberry paper is amazing. You're wondering if I would give feedback on people's artwork on live, or is it something that you want to keep more for mentorship? Yeah, live, sort of like feedback of work, I don't normally really do on live streams. If I was going to, I'd want to isolate that stream to be specifically about that, which I haven't really done before. So if I do into the future, I mean, I'm not against it, but I would have to limit it in terms of the amount of people, because I would limit it to like an hour, a half, 2 hour max stream. And then probably what I would end up doing is like having it as an open sort of like submission. It's kind of like a first come, first serve is the way I would probably treat it. So whoever work I would see, I would give feedback on, which may last about 15 minutes per person. But I haven't done it before. I do give feedback in person. So if you ever saw me at a show, like a convention, sorry, I'm off the page, you can come up to me and ask for like a portfolio review, which I would do. I've done that in the past many thousands of times. So that kind of stuff I'm open towards. But online, I'd have to just be careful about the timing of it and how many people are looking for it. But to keep it fair, so I maybe even like consider like a lottery system, maybe that could be better too, possibly, I don't know. But right now, these streams are more just, question and answers, Q&As, live drawing. I might want to even just create a poll in the future, maybe on my Instagram, how many people would be even interested in a once in a off while stream that includes feedback. If you're interested in hearing what feedback sounds like from me, I do place up kind of like class samples on my YouTube channel. And if you watch those, you'll kind of like listen to how the classes are run. I know there's definitely a video on there from one of my classes. And it kind of tells you or shows you how I respond and how the classes operate, how the feedback goes. That's also one of the reasons why I'm a little bit hesitant to do feedbacks online. And if I did, it would have to be like once in a while. Is due to the fact of, the classes. So most interaction of feedback sort of thing happens in a classroom. Did I ever create any comics? My own self-published comic. But that's been a while now. But I haven't worked on an actual comic series for some publisher. I've been asked, but I have no interest in that. Because the deadlines are too tight and the pay is not that good. Unless it was like a short story for like a brand that was like something I really enjoyed, and they asked me to do like a, my own take on something, that'd be kind of fun. So the reason why I did this light pink first is to give myself an idea of where light is coming from. But you have to understand that with markers like watercolor, it's a layering technique. So the colors that are underneath it can influence the one that's on top also. So it can help fill some of the void and to influence hues and shifts and saturations also too. But it's also then a softer transition. So it can make things feel luminous. Which is why with marker and watercolor, working through layers is important. We rarely put down the color of the paint directly as it's supposed to be. Layer, layer. And that's a style of painting you can do. But In terms of my traditional training of painting, I didn't do that. Kind of like showing all the crumpling effects of the cape and whatnot, which is why I'm not just like filling it in. I'm considering some of the shapes of the folds, like right there, how light will sheen through. Creases and folds. Now, I'm feeling better, yeah. Better than for sure before. Things are progressing. I'm not, gonna say I'm not getting better. I am. Despite, us talking about things like, the anxious feeling and the mentality where things can get stuck a little bit on like some of the negative stuff. Despite that, the brain tends to want to go where it wants to go, but when I really step back and look at things, I've progressed. Thankfully, a lot of the more severe things are gone. Numbness is gone. At least I can breathe. I can talk. The talking was hard in the beginning. My voice almost went away. When I was at the hospital, I was like whispering because I couldn't project. Like right now, it's a little bit hoarse, but good. So this is the kind of stuff I really wanted to do the live stream for, was to like test this stuff. My classes can run, minimally 3 hours, up to 4 or 5. I'm trying to keep it to like 3 or 4 hours now. But can I run that long? So right now with the stream, we're going 2 hours and 24 minutes. This is all good information, or at least experience, as I'm building back up to class level. So we're supposed to be picking things back up here real soon in August. The end of August, I'm running my classes again from last session. For the students I had to put on hiatus. And they've been super patient, and I can't thank them enough. But we can only wait so long. So I got to get back on that horse and start doing it again. That feels pretty cool so far. We're going to bring in the rich red now, this one here. Nalam was also asking, what do you recommend for a beginner that just started your class but also wants to learn fast? I mean, I understand that you want to kind of download this information immediately into your brain to use. And I'm sure you're not trying to rush or anything like that. I think most people will respond by saying kind of slow it down a little bit. But I don't think that's really what you're asking. I think what you're asking is about how to maybe be efficient and learn appropriately to absorb this information in a way where, it's not necessarily being bogged down by unnecessary things. In that case, I think a lot of it is just being very kind of like question aware in the moments of what you're doing. For example, like when you're in a classroom, it's like you do your homework and you meet that instructor, or you go into the class. And while you're working on homework, if you haven't really thought about like what to ask or engage in for feedback, and then instructor asks you, hey, do you have any questions? You're going to be like, not really. What you're telling me, everything makes sense. well, then you're not really mining more information, right? So while you're doing the homework, as you start to think about what you're actively doing physically, mentally, technically, don't just like mark that question in your mind and think, oh, I'll ask that later on. Write it down, literally on the homework page, right? And so that way those things can be engaged in as a conversation right at the live class, and not having you for you to like remember what to think about or ask questions to. That way then it taps into the immediacy of your troubles and issues. And that could potentially help you learn quicker because it goes to the source of some of the problems you're having in the week, right? Because feedback can become so generalized, where one person can do something and then the instructor will give feedback, but they're going to speak on it in a way where they want to make sure they help as many people as they can. So they still have to generalize some feedback, of course, and that's great and all. But if you're in a live classroom where you're getting feedback, sometimes you do need that extra little bit of assistance as to like directly what you're doing. That's where then, of course, like I said, you asking questions is important. Engagement, right? I mean, you have no idea how many times I've been in a classroom where it's like in person or online. I get like 20 plus people. 5 people are actually really engaging, and everyone else is just kind of sitting there doing their thing and ask questions like, no, I'm fine. They just kind of coast through. I don't blame them. And sometimes people just get a little bit shy. Maybe they don't literally have a question. They just follow along. It could be just their personality, and I'm not going to try to force it out of them. But I think there's sometimes missed opportunities. That people probably take advantage of more, but everybody has different ways of learning. But I think that's also one thing to be mindful of, is that it's your responsibility to do that. The instructor is only there as guidance. This is a direction you can try to take, but as you go that direction, it's your responsibility to engage and find out, well, what about this and what about that? I'm trying to do that and this and this and this, which creates, potentially more dialogue. But if you're not being mindful of your process and your education, the instructor has nothing else to work with. So all they can really do is just keep telling you what to do based on what they know. So if you come out of the classroom, feel like, man, I haven't really grown. Most of the time, it's not really the instructor's fault. It's not really a fault to anybody, really, but it's the lack of communication, right? So certainly don't go into a blame game. It's like, oh, this education was poor or terrible. I mean, that can be very much the case, Yes, there can be some instructors that just are there for a check, or they lack experience, or they're jaded, or they literally don't care. And hopefully you don't come across something like that. But keep that in mind as to like what I'm mentioning. That red's going to come up here and just kind of fade off. Let's go to a different part. Just seeing how much is coming through again. Okay. Actually, let's hit up the red on this portion here with a symbol. I'm not using that other pink. I think this red colors here is good enough to find the lights. Diamond had a question, which is, how do you manage the balance between your life and your art? Relationships, activities you want to do. It's a part where you're struggling and you love to hear about my view on it. Well, again, that's a similar kind of like deal where that question can become quite a lot to talk about. But to keep it simple, I try to keep in mind where all those things relate to each other. It won't be the case, obviously, for everybody, right? Your situation in terms of like where you're from, your relationships, what you do, are all unique to your life, and you have to then find a way to kind of like make sure they kind of fit together in some way or manner, where you can actually then tap into them in with the most appropriate amount of time to be given to it, right? At the same time, prioritization is important. You can't do everything equally. You just have to accept that. As much as you want to play video games, you got schoolwork to do, or you have this relationship. I'm not saying you shouldn't play video games at all. I play games a lot. I like playing games. But there's a sense of understanding where, it can become not a distraction, but it can overtake the imbalance of the other things I'm responsible to do. So experience really comes into play there. And the only way to know, of course, is to just find out by doing, right? And if you notice that, hey, I'm playing video games for like 5 hours a day, and you're realizing I don't have enough time to do everything else, well, then there's some adjustment you got to make there. Maybe I'll play 2 hours today. Maybe that'll open up more hours to do more homework. So you still get to play, but maybe you won't really get to play as much as you want to, right? But the thing is, it's not just about time balance. It's also about allowing yourself to feel okay to do those things. If you don't feel okay to do the interests of activities that you want to do, to spend time with people that you're with, and all you do is isolate your priority towards, I just got to work, and cut out everything else, that's not very healthy. So you have to allow yourself to feel okay to say that, hey, spending time on this other stuff is very beneficial, because that also, for me, is going to help in my art. The relationships that I keep and the activities that I have can influence my engagement of art as well too, in terms of the stories I can make, consideration to design, inspirations of things. All the other activities that I have can feed into it. So they're not unrelated. And so because of that, I don't feel guilty spending time in those other areas as well too. So you will then make time for it because you know there's value there, right? And then you seek the balance through experience, if that makes sense. But that will take time, like anything else. But if you cut those things out entirely, because you feel like that's not going to help me in my progression to be a professional artist, I think in a lot of ways you're giving yourself a disservice to become a well-rounded, well-lived artist. You become maybe technically really good, but technique only takes you so far. If you got nothing to say because you haven't lived a little bit, well then, what's the point, right? Oh, that was yellow. That's all right. What do I do in a situation like that? Accept it. It's part of the design. You can't undo marker. It's permanent. I could go in there with paint and make that paint that yellow, like the traditional color set. But I could also say it's part of the design of the costume. Kind of looks cool like that. Or I could just make it dark black, like the Kingdom Come version of Superman, where it's just like a black emblem with the S. It's not even really S, but stuff like that happens all the time. You're not paying attention. It's like, oh, you color that blue. This is the one blue just to kind of set the tone and also the light direction again. Rigo's asking, what do you recommend to beginners who want to draw without guidelines one day? Well, it's a slow, progressive thing that you get used to. So what you might want to try is drawing something with guidelines initially, experience it, ink it, get a sense of how to process, draw it again immediately thereafterwards with less guidelines. Not no guidelines, but with less guidelines. So that is then also about the idea of a line economy, How many lines do you need to underlay to give yourself an idea of what that thing looks like to then apply ink? And then maybe you do another one immediately afterwards. They don't have to be like full blown illustrations. It could just be literally a sketch study of someone's face, right? Draw it 3 times. And then in each process, take away some of that guideline, take away some of that, underlay, and go directly to the pen process, because you then know what the process of how to build to that is immediately. You get experience out of that, right? But then that would take, how do I then apply it to all these different things? Well, you put the time into all those things, to understand them. It's going to be tens of thousands of hours of work, which will take you dozens and dozens of years. But that doesn't mean that just because you don't have all those tens of thousands of hours that you can't become a professional. You build to those things even while you are professional, right? So it's not like you have to train yourself to become this proficient, high-level pro, whatever concept is, at your end of your education, and all of a sudden you look for work. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to be ready at the end of education. You won't feel ready, but you may be good enough to start putting yourself out there and getting a little bit of work here and there. And as you're still training, you train through your work and you learn. But you also learn other things. As we're going through the stream, and people are listening in, keep in mind as a reminder, these are all things that are based on my opinion and experience. Doesn't necessarily mean it's truth or guaranteed. That's going to work that way for you. But just take this into account that it's just based on, conversation and opinion. Let's bring in, let's see what this one looks like. It's about the same. It's actually a little bit lighter. Let's try this one. This one's going to be pretty heavy. Ooh. Now that's blue. Do you have any tips for the eyes? Shape design. You want to treat it more round, more angular, but then, study the traditional, foundations of actually understanding the anatomy, construction of the eye, and then you learn how to then deconstruct it and stylize it through shape and proportion. Imitation and studies of other artists are also very, very helpful. Something I did all the time. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see. Baum Art is asking, question, how do you feel or how do you deal with the feeling of rushing while drawing and to slow down? Well, something we had answered beforehand. What I mentioned beforehand was to basically kind of give yourself triggers of distraction to stop yourself. Some things were timers. For me, it's visual, watching something to give myself a moment to step away from the work. But that's what you want to do, is to have a chance and opportunity to step away from the actual piece to give your mind a chance to process what's going on. So, as I said, timers are pretty helpful on that side. I understand that some people are jumping into the stream right now, so you might miss questions, so I get it. And questions are still welcome. It might be a little bit, quick in terms of an answer because we may have covered it already, but it's okay to ask. Let's see here. What else we got? Nepal is asking, what were some things that you think really helped you to get to where you are in your skills? People, you know, good people, good instructors, good friends, great peers, working friends as well too in the industry, good students, people that challenge you, but not necessarily put you down. Came from family, came from friends. And I talk about this often, but I'm very fortunate to have a very strong connective tissue with people that really are encouraging and supportive. Without the individuals there to kind of like back me, I certainly would not be where I am. And I also understand that that's not something that's easily, found. Some people actually have the adverse effect of that. A lot of people that kind of like push you away from it, they have very negative things to say about it. And also, of course, lack of education. They don't know. They don't understand. So all they can really give you is information based on what they know or assume. And it doesn't sound very nice. But yeah, I think that was a huge part of my growth. The right people. Salman's asking, what do you think about embracing mistakes when making art? I mean, it's critical because you're always going to make mistakes. It doesn't stop. I've made mistakes here constantly. you know, uh, it's not just about embracing it. It's knowing that that's just the reality of the process, and it's just normal. And so people wonder, it's like, well, how do you fix it? There is no fixing it. You just keep going. You learn how to adapt with it. Not just embrace it, you adapt to it. You use it as an advantage. It's no longer a mistake. It's a part of the process to make it achieve to what you're trying to get to. So then I don't look back, I'm like, well, that could have been a mistake, and that is a mistake. It's like, well, yeah, there were parts that didn't go the way I wanted to, but it altered the course to make it what it is now. And am I having fun doing this now? Absolutely. So I don't only isolate and focus on what I don't like. And they could be there if you ask me directly, hey, what do you think is not working? Yeah, I could really think about it and point it out to you. But that's not where my mind goes. So adaptation is huge. I forgot what this one was. Here, I think. The red underwear. This is where in the bottom we can use the marker to fill in the drawing where the pen wasn't giving it to us. Pablo is asking, if you could only use one brush for the rest of your life, what would you choose? Round, flat, filbert, or dagger? Probably the round. It's a hard choice, actually, out of the two, which is round or flat. I've loved flat brushes, but the round is the most universal. So it would be out of one of those two. If I had to choose out of the two, my initial instinctual response was a round, but the more I think about it, more than likely, actually, what I probably would choose is a flat. Because the flat can give me the most versatile, for me, in terms of stroke. When I would paint digital, mostly flat brushes. When I used to paint in oils, I love the round and the flats. When I used to paint in gouache for landscape, it was purely flat brush. But yeah, flat brush is what I'll probably choose. Nonsense. Appreciate the comment. If whatever that comment was, sorry I can't translate. Apologies. Rio was asking, have you heard about the channel named 10,000 Hours? I have not. It's a channel about learning drawing. The creator posts a video of him drawing for hours every day until he reaches 10,000 hours. It's cool. It may work for him. Do I believe in the 10,000 hour rule? I think it's a variable of an experience that can work for certain people, but I don't necessarily think it's the guaranteed method for everybody. I think it's the ideas of adaptability. It's the idea of the proper environment. Having then, of course, the drive and discipline, which then goes into the 10,000 hour rule. But I don't think it's necessarily that one element, which is the key to unlocking your growth and progression. Again, it's a variable. Do I think you need 10,000 hours? Not, again, no. Because it could be 100,000 hours for some other person, or it could be 5,000 hours for another person. But what is it you're also trying to achieve? If you don't have a context or a sense of what you're even trying to go for, not that you have to know the answer to yourself, but you talk to people. Like I said, environment. You need to have a community. Then you can discuss things. Well, what is it should I be focusing on now? How do I plan out my future? What does a general timeline look like? What is then the average of things, right? And then you start to see many different roads and paths, and you say, well, maybe I can spend this amount of time on this section of area, and maybe this amount of time on that section of area, and then not focus on this 10,000 hour rule. By the end of the 10,000 hours, I need to be here. There's no guarantee of that. And then what happens if that person does hit 10,000 hours, and you look at the work like, I'm nowhere near where I want to be? How are you going to feel? It's like, I invested so much of my time and life into this. I should be this individual, but I'm not this thing. Because you're looking at social media or you're looking at other YouTube channels, like, but they're doing this based on their 10,000 hours. Why am I not doing that? So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying that's, the areas of what I've seen. So I think it's better to make sure you have a lot more of a stronger connection to individuals and peoples to talk about what are the pathways, where do I spend my time in a more efficient and smart manner. Not in this expectation guaranteed mentality of like, if I do this, then I'm guaranteed that. I'm not saying that this person creating this channel has or is saying that sort of thing, because obviously I haven't listened to this person. But these are just me thinking about those kind of things about where it can go. Let me get some yellow. Learning foundations is important, but you got to be able to burn your own path as well too, which requires questioning of the fundamentals, questioning of the rules. Understand them first, learn them to the extent of the level where you feel competent with them, but then from there question it. Someone says draw this way. Okay, you draw that way, and you step back and say, well, why should I draw that way? Maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's a different shortcut. Not to go against that individual or to question them as a person or as an instructor. To question your path as to what's the next plateau for me. And it's not just about carbon copying some instructor or some other person or artist. You start that way at the beginning because you don't know anything. But eventually, as you mature past those areas of levels, you have to find ways to take ownership of that tool, and you find a way to navigate that path for yourself. This is what I mentioned earlier about the responsibility of the student. I've said this before in the past, but my mentor Norm, that's one of the things he told me. It's like you pick it up and run with it. What that means is find your own way. In the past, when I first started teaching, I was so concerned by like, well, what would Norm do? And how would he teach this? And what would he say? How would he draw that? And I'm always just thinking about what some other person would do in that situation. Well, what would I do? And the only way to find that out is by going into those situations, by putting yourself in that challenge. And then you question, you make mistakes, you don't do it very well, and you get better. and give it time, where it took me, I would say, a solid 20 plus years to get to where I'm at, but some of you will take half that time. You're exposed to information like this sooner than I was. Some of you draw way better than me at the same age. Guaranteed, I've come across hundreds of students in my 15 plus years of teaching that are technically far better than I was at their age, which means that when they get to my age, who knows what they'll be at. The skills that I have will be paltry compared to the next 10, 15, 20 years of students that are coming out now. They'll blow this stuff out of the water. And I'm, okay, and there's people that are far better than me. They'll be blown out of the water. But that's the way it's supposed to go. I'm going to play with that. Well, no, I'll leave it. Let's leave it blue. I'm not going to question it. Leave it. Let's go to Batman real quickly. I'm going to finish the Batman up here a real bit, and then we're going to end the stream here real soon. Let's see. I don't want to go cool. Well, maybe the cool violet would be kind of interesting. And the warm gray. The violet. Purples. Let's see how that goes. Well, not the warm gray. Let's stick with the cool gray. Where'd that one go? So the thing about markers, like you have so many out now, it's like you lose track of where they all are. And then your table becomes a mess. Look at the table here that I have right now. Look at that. It's a mess. Bomkire, I think is what it is, or Bomkiri. Asking, how am I doing? I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. Better and better through the days. Slowly, hopefully getting back to that sense of normalcy. Hopefully going into the future, we can maybe do more of these streams. Again, I think the last time I did one was last week. So hopefully maybe in the future, sooner than later, we'll do another stream. My schedule is relatively free right now, so maybe I can hop on more than later. Let's use this purple. It's a little bit lighter. Feels dry. And we'll use the cool gray combination here. So it's not just like a purple suit. It'll have the influence of that lavender purple, but it won't be in your face. What I kind of miss though is like, I've been trying to work out at home. I do all the PT stuff, but I do miss being in the gym. But I can't really drive right now yet. So I have my Prism glasses, but I'm still getting used to them. Maybe by next month, I'll try to drive a little bit. Close areas, little stores I can go to, the gym. Not being able to physically active, like I can't shoot my bow, archery stuff too. But now that I have my glasses again, like I said, I should start doing that more. I would say what was tough for a minute here was like being outside, my eyes were super light sensitive. Because they were paralyzed, my eyes wouldn't dilate very well. So when I would step outside, it would be so bright. It was hard. Get headaches. Almost Sharon is asking, what do you think of people that want to get into the animation industry right now when the industry is going through major changes? This sort of period of change and adjustment, sort of like turmoil in a way, is always going to happen. Yes, we're in it right now. But the problem is, do you know when it's going to end? And it's never really that way, right? It's not like the whole of the industry is in collapse and then all of a sudden it's going to be good again. It may feel that way, but it's not a linear line that's like up and down like this. There are some portions of the industry or certain studios or certain industry, let's say mediums, are doing better and some things are less so. In the world of animation, depending on what you're talking about, 2D or 3D, or just animation in general, depending on what you're working on, there's opportunities out there. Yes, it is still a bit tricky right now as a student to get out there to find work, but it's not impossible. But that's always been the case, right? So you could say, well, I'm going to wait, or maybe I'll do something else, and the industry will get better. Not in the way that you want it to be, right? Or what you think it should be. It never follows a plan that you want. So the best thing to do in this case, I mean, a lot of people can tell you to like just, adapt, find different work. I think that it can be a viable option, but I have certain problems about stuff like that. Like, for example, it's like, I want to do animation, right? For some series. Oh, there's no work. Okay, I'll do like motion graphic animation for advertising. And you find a job like that. But the problem is you then become dependent on that job, right? Because you get painted into a corner, or it's like financially, you get secured to it. You get comfortable. So all of a sudden that dream of like, I want to work in animation starts to erode away. I just have work now. So you have your 9 to 5. I just go in, do that work. And then time goes on so instantly, before you know it, 10 years have passed. It's like you never got to work on the thing you wanted to do. So why wait 10, 15 years when you get older where you then never really do it? Because it's much riskier at that point than trying to do it now, right? And risking it. And maybe you don't get in the industry, but at least you gave it your all. And it's not like, oh, I'm just going to put my work in, maybe I'll get a chance. Not luck-based. It's based on how much effort, of course, this is obvious, right? That you give into this sort of like chance of finding an opportunity to work in the industry, but you got to give yourself that chance. Well, how long do I give myself? There's no set timeline, but it can't be done in 6 months. It can't be even maybe done in 1 year. Maybe you give yourself a little bit of time. And of course, you can then say, well, financially, I can't do it. Well, then balance it where you maybe have a 9 to 5 job, and also you then try to apply for the animation industry at the same time, right? Maybe you will get that other animation job, but in the meantime, don't get too comfortable. Keep putting yourself into working in animations or small little sample reels for the actual job that you want to get, right? It's just a stepping stone at that point. But you can't get complacent, to say that, well, now I have that job. Time passes. I just need money. Don't wait. Just do it now. And you won't necessarily get to A to B the way you want to now. But like I said, I would rather live with no regret at that point. Problem is, it's like no matter what I say, it's like it doesn't matter because your life and path is set to your own. And it's like there's no answer here. And sometimes you kind of want a little bit more of a secure advice or direction as to like what you literally should be doing. But it doesn't exist. What I'm trying to just tell you to do is follow what you feel is right. It sounds cliche, and it is, but at the same time, I think there's truth to it. Because based on what I'm going through right now, and I've known this since my youth, is that time is very short, and you really only have that one chance. And the chance, could happen if you're older, but the percentage gets smaller. And the percentage is not necessarily big when you're younger, but you have a higher chance of coming out of that risk of being able to also apply yourself to other things. Not so much when you become later in age. Not because they're not as skilled or talented, but because you have many more responsibilities. Maybe you start to have a family, you got to have a house, you got to have this or this or this. Then the movement and the chance to try to do something that you want to do becomes way more narrow. So you don't do it because it's way too scary. It's scary now when you're younger too, but it's a different kind of experience. People that are older now that want to change their careers can still do it. It's not easy, but I'm not saying it's impossible either too. But the obviousness is still there. When you're older, different responsibility when you're younger. So pay little attention to things like trends or news about the industry. Oh, but it's doing terrible right now. Yeah, but that could be the case at any time, based on that individual person's experience or based on the information that they only just heard, right? And you could say, but that person in the industry working at this company told me that. Well, that's still their experience. It's not what you're going through. So develop your own opinion and experience by going out and trying it yourself, right? Taking advice is important, but it's not dogma. It's not necessarily truth. It's just, a limited sort of like data pool, which you only then use as a sense of where things are, but not to just straight dictate what you should or should not be doing, unless it's some physically dangerous thing. But in this case, about trying to pursue something like this, like a job, just because somebody says, hey, the industry sucks right now, don't apply for a job. And you say, oh, okay, I'll do something else then. That makes no sense. Started missing a bunch of questions above. Is this a real cover? Well, it's a real comic, but this is just a cover I'm just drawing for fun. John's asking, where's the next event to meet me? It's going to be at New York Comic Con, middle of October, and then Lightbox at the end of October. What do I think is the best inexpensive tool for painting? Watercolor. Here's a Winsor Newton Cotman, Cotman. It's like $30. Pugs is saying, you saw my work and Jungi's work and you wanted to imitate and copy what I was doing. Turns out, who are you kidding? Well, you can tell yourself that, but first, the big question is, do you like it? Is it fun for you? Regardless of how you feel like it turned out or what other people think. If you like it and it's fun to do, pursue it. If you're expecting all of a sudden to imitate and copy this stuff and to have it be a certain way now, that's not fair. You're talking about a comparison where someone like me and you, the separation is time of who knows how long, potentially 25 years, compared to even someone like Kim Jong-gi, who might have not just more years, but many, many more thousands of hours compared to you. So how is it fair for you to look at this work and be like, I'm going to copy it, and it should turn out the way I expect it to be based on what I'm seeing? That's crazy talk, So you got to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, but really more change your perspective on like what it is you should be focusing on. Less on how things are turning out and more things on based on experience of process. Is it fun to do, right? Is it just entertaining? Don't think about a job. Don't think about a technique. Don't think about education. Think of it doing it because it's just something you have fun doing, right? And if you can't allow yourself to do that, well, then you will have a very difficult time. And when I say difficult time, it's not difficult time just in art. Potentially difficult time in general. Which just means, going back to what I said earlier, allow yourself to enjoy things again. Don't feel guilty that you're not doing this enough, or you shouldn't be doing that, or you're or feeling embarrassed by things. I understand we all can, as humans, respond that way, but what I'm telling you is that it's okay. This is Batman's cape. Let's see. It's about 3 hours now, so we're only going to go for maybe 20 more minutes. I'm going to answer a couple more questions, and we'll be closing down real soon. Trashy Trav is asking or saying, you've heard me say, always go into a piece with a clear goal. Do you also envision the piece and somewhat project it down onto the paper from your mind? To a certain level, yeah. I'm not going to say I don't. Again, I'll visualize with my hands. I'll give myself certain points. I'll think in my head certain things. It's not a complete picture, but it's very sort of like isolated or ghostly, and it kind of fades in and out. But no, of course, there's definitely some mentality or visual in my mind that I am projecting onto the page. But it's not like I have a clear image entirely of this thing, and I'm just like tracing over that empty visual. That's not the case. Do I have any tips on digital watercolor? Not much. I don't really do that watercolor stuff digital as much. I used to try, I used to use watercolor brushes on Corel Paint, which I think is a great program, by the way, for watercolor stuff, but I haven't touched that in decades. Pogsu was also saying, you learn from the foundations that you realize that there's a lot of information and serious skills behind those drawings. In terms of like chunky stuff, of course, but the foundations are still important. Not a problem, Colin. So Kaiser's asking, what exactly are the changes that the industry is going through besides the massive layoffs, product over hiring during 2020? Well, a lot of it has to do with kind of consumer confidence, like where the money is going, right? And a lot of it has to do with some generational changes. Movie theaters are dying. Streaming was everything. But then there was another problem, which is just oversaturation. And this has to do with more of the people that are higher up, the greed of it, fast turnaround, which then has less production time, which strains the artist, which lowers the quality, which makes it cheaper in a project, right? So then people don't want to pay for it. So there's a whole cycle of a bunch of things. And people are complaining now, it's like, why is the CGI so bad today? It's purely based on production time, It's not because of the quality of the artist. And I mean, that's a part of it as well, too. Certain artists that were there and, maybe are somewhere else, or less trained people are working in the industry. They don't have the experience, but a lot of it has to do with the time. They're given less time and less money because they're also competing with overseas artists as well, too, because they have the numbers of individuals, and they're also bidding for the lowest level of pay, which cancels out a lot of the artists that are over here. So the overall quality drops. So it's not that you can't get the same level of CGI as it was back in like whatever year that you're thinking of. Time is everything. Production time. So that's a part of what's affecting the industry right now, is fast turnaround, large amount of content, right? It's like streaming services that are throwing out as much as possible, seeing what sticks. But then the problem is they don't really even like have any confidence in them. So something that is a great project, they'll cancel it like that because it just doesn't have the numbers, even though it could be a great potential IP or brand. For example, I'm sure some of you watched that one animated series. Damn it. It's on the tip of my tongue. I was just about to say it. It's the one with the crazy aliens and little creatures and monsters. What the hell was that show called? You guys remember that one? It was streaming on Netflix. Before that was on Amazon Prime, I think. It's literally right there. What is it called? This is going to bother me because I love that show. Some of you might know what it is. Either way, it was a fantastic series. Really well written, amazing visuals, really well animated, and it was canceled, right? So there's, all those elements, consumer confidence, the client confidence, all those things play into it. Not aliens and monsters. It's a series. Hold on. Sorry, I need to find what this is. It's bothering me now. Scavenger's Reign. So if you've never seen Scavenger's Reign, check it out. It's amazing. Probably one of my favorite series and shows that came out. It wasn't last year, was it? When did it come out? This was 2023. It still might be on Netflix. I can't remember. Because the original streaming service dropped it, and then Netflix picked it up, I think. It's the same creator who did the recent show, which is Common Side Effects. That's also a great series. That one's continuing. But Scavenger's Reign, mind-blowing. Was it HBO first, Max? Okay, I thought it was Prime. So yeah, HBO, oh, that's right, it was Max. HBO Max, and then they dropped it, and then went to Netflix. In the advent, like I said, content is a part of this as well, too. Because, why do people keep saying that there's no originality? Because big companies are just trying to make as much money as possible. So they just take old content and recycle it, right? This is what Disney's doing. This is why all this live action shit is coming out right now, which I cannot stand. But it's what makes money. And they're also trying to hold on to the licenses and all that sort of stuff. So when all of a sudden this brand new show comes out, which has amazing story and design, it's not going to have the same pedigree as Lilo and Stitch. So of course it's not going to go anywhere. I believe it was, but it might have been animated in different countries too. But the initial creator is American, yes. And there's a lot of great other, animated series from all over the world, internationally. So, Nocturne wanted to ask, because you're new and selling art commissions most of all, did you have some advice? Well, I mean, there's a lot I don't know in terms of your situation, Nocturne. I hope you're kind of doing this also in person, attending festivals or shows, cons, that sort of stuff. You can use things like this, fan art, to catch the attention of individuals, which I think is perfectly fine. And then also at the same time, sort of back it up with some original work as well too. So you at least have kind of an out on being able to build content that is of your property. So don't try to isolate just a thing that's popular at the moment and only get stuck on that. Again, I do this for fun as well too, but I don't necessarily only do this, right? There's nothing wrong with doing fan art, but at the meantime, do this and in conjunction also create your own stuff. So use this to catch the attention of the viewer because big property sells, but then also sell your work from there. Okay, we're almost wrapping up here, done. If anybody has any last comments, questions, please do ask. I do appreciate everyone hanging out. I still have some things I'm going to add to this cover, but for the moment, the two primary characters are kind of there. So it was fun to create. And we'll do more streams in the future, but in the future, I probably won't be doing another cover. I'll probably end up doing something else entirely, just to keep drawing, sketching, talking to people. But for the time being, it's like we've gone a good long while. So hopefully if there's other questions you can ask them now. But I do hope the conversations today also were insightful, helpful to some degree, and apply to whatever direction you're going to. For the moment, for me, it's still continue to try to just get back into the mode of doing this day to day. Hopefully the eyes come back to play. Right now, I can kind of see that it's, and now I'm starting to feel it. It's like the slight fatigue. The eyes get a little bit heavy, but still good. Thankfully, the fact that I can even do this at all is good. Devere, yes, it's. I mean, inspired by many other things, but Mobius probably would be a good anchor point to look at as an inspiration for that show. Almost Sharon, what sites do I use for reference now, by the way? Well, it depends on the reference, honestly. There's so many things I could be looking at. I don't mind just going onto Google or Pinterest. But I will say, like, one good resource is, like, if you want to do things like film studies, I would go to a place called, hold on. Shoot. Give me 1 second. My memory is kind of like blanking on me for some things. This is what I used to use this all the time in my classrooms. God dang it, what was it called? Here it is. I'll put the link in the chat as well too. This is a pretty cool site. It's called Film Grab, and it's just a website that has a lot of great references of film, movies, and they update it constantly. So if you want to study from film, things like composition, value, things like lighting, color, even like character work, portrait studies, film, movies is one of the best places to go to. So we used to do hundreds of film studies in schools. Farah, in terms of a good size for a sketchbook, for me, my standard size is 9 by 12, 9 inches by 12 inches. That's my common size. But anything smaller than that is okay. Obviously, going bigger than that might be kind of unwieldy for some people. I like large books though, but anything smaller than 9 by 12 or A4 size is probably solid. Anything smaller is okay too. But there's no set size that's the best. It's based on purely your preference at that point. So play with a bunch. Nini is asking, do you think the categories will be more various in the next few years? Most animations these days have a pretty same topic content with just some slightly changes. Well, I think there's always going to be resurgence, like a, what do they call that? A resurgence, not a resurgence, I'm sorry, a rebellion maybe, a renaissance within art, within animation as well too, that goes through different periods of different kind of art. I mean, in the 90s was a big part of that in animation for sure, especially with anime. And then I would say there was a period where, like in Europe, there was a lot of great animation coming out of it. Right now, in my opinion, animation right now is it is kind of like plateaued. Everything kind of feels the same, both from American to Asian to European animations, because they all kind of feed into each other, driven by corporation. But I think then the small film industry, small animations and stuff like that, individual artists that come about, there's always going to be a resurgence of that. It may not be as large of fluctuation, but I think it still will happen. Favorite color today is green. Okay, cool. I think that's about all the questions we'll take on today. Anyways, thank you guys for your attention, hanging out, chilling with me, drawing, asking questions. I hope today's sort of conversations were interesting. Obviously, this will be back onto YouTube for you guys to stream and watch anytime you want to. I'll most likely post this once I'm done on my Instagram, but follow me there if you're not already. And I'll come back in terms of live streaming, most likely would be sometime next week. It's usually uncertain. I kind of post a story on my Instagram 20, 30 minutes beforehand, and you then go on from there. So it's all pop-ups. There's no set time. So if you catch me then, we'll talk more. If not, maybe there'll be another time. So enjoy the rest of your night, day, morning, whatever it may be.